Chapter 1. You Have Only Moments to Live. If I had to do it over again, Nadine Stair, an 85-year-old from Louisville, Kentucky, once said, I'd have more moments. I'd try to have nothing else, just moments, one after another, instead of living so many years ahead of each day. As I look around at the 30 or so people gathered for a new class in the stress reduction clinic, I marvel at what we are about to engage in together. I see Edward's bright, kind face and ponder what he must carry daily as a 34-year-old insurance executive with AIDS. I see Peter, a 47-year-old businessman who, after a heart attack 18 months ago, is here to learn how to take it easy. Next to him is Beverly, bright and cheerful, whose life was radically changed at 42 when a cerebral aneurysm burst, leaving her uncertain of her own identity. Then there is Marge, a 44-year-old former oncology nurse, referred from the pain clinic. Years ago, she injured her back and knees, preventing a patient from falling. Now she walks with a cane, unable to work, and faces surgery for a mass in her abdomen. She feels wound up like a spring, exploding at the slightest thing. Next to Marge is Arthur, a 56-year-old policeman suffering from severe migraines and panic attacks. And beside him is Margaret, a 75-year-old retired schoolteacher who has trouble sleeping. A French-Canadian truck driver named Phil, also from the pain clinic, is out on disability with chronic low back pain and must figure out a new way to support his family of 4. Next to Phil is Roger, a 30-year-old carpenter in pain from a back injury, who, according to his wife, has been abusing pain medications for years. His wife, enrolled in another class, is so fed up that she is certain they will get divorced. Across the room sits Hector, a former professional wrestler from Puerto Rico, whose imposing frame carries the consequences of a hard time controlling his temper, violent outbursts and chest pains. Their doctors have sent them all here for stress reduction, to come together one morning a week for the next 8 weeks. For what, really? The level of collective suffering in the room this morning is immense. A gathering of people struggling, not just physically, but emotionally with the full catastrophe of their lives. In a moment of wonder before the class begins, I marvel at our chutzpah in inviting these people and the 120 others starting this week to embark on this journey. What can we possibly do for all these people in 8 short weeks? The interesting thing is that we don't really do anything for them. Instead, we invite them to do something radically new for themselves, to experiment with living intentionally from moment to moment. This is not the hedonistic living for the moment, but a deeper living in the moment. The work that goes on in the clinic is deceptively simple. We start with where people are in their lives, right now, and we are willing to work with them if they are ready to engage in a certain kind of work on themselves. We never give up on anyone. Each moment is a new beginning, a new opportunity to start over, to tune in, to reconnect. In some ways, our job is simply to give people permission to live their moments fully and to provide them with tools to do so systematically. We introduce them to ways of listening to their own bodies and minds and to begin trusting their own experience. We offer a new way of being, a way of looking at problems that can make life more joyful and rich. We call this the way of awareness, or the way of mindfulness. If you were to look in on one of our classes, you would see people with their eyes closed, sitting quietly or lying motionless on the floor. To an outside observer, it might look strange, as if nothing is going on, but it is a very rich and complex nothing. They are not daydreaming or sleeping. They are working hard. They are practicing non-doing, actively tuning into each moment to remain awake and aware. They are practicing being. They are purposefully stopping all the doing in their lives and relaxing into the present, allowing their bodies and minds to come to rest, no matter what is on their mind or how their body feels. To be admitted to the clinic, each person must make a major commitment to spend time every day practicing this just being, creating an island of being in the sea of constant doing. The lessons of mindfulness involve learning to watch your mind from moment to moment, to let go of thoughts without being driven by them, and to make room for new ways of seeing old problems. The more you practice, the more the power of mindfulness will grow. This book is meant to serve as a guide in this process, But a map is not the territory it portrays. The journey you have to live yourself by cultivating mindfulness in your own life. The basic effort must come from you. Cultivating mindfulness is not unlike eating. It would be absurd for someone else to eat for you. You have to actually eat the food to be nourished. In the same way, you have to actually practice mindfulness to reap its benefits. Until recently, the word meditation often evoked thoughts of mysticism, because people did not understand that meditation is really about paying attention. Since everyone pays attention, at least occasionally, the practice is not as foreign as it might seem. However, when we start to pay attention more closely, we find that our mind is often in the past or the future, not the present. We are on automatic pilot, only half awake. Think of driving a car and having no awareness of what you saw along the way. Our thoughts are so overpowering that they easily cloud our awareness. We become literally lost in our thoughts. You can experience this for yourself. Close your eyes, sit with a straight back, and become aware of your breathing. Don't try to control it. Just witness it as it flows in and out for 3 minutes. If you find your mind wandering or judging the exercise as foolish, simply note that as a thought and gently bring your attention back to your breath. This little experiment is a taste of what meditation is, the process of observing body and mind intentionally, accepting your experiences as they are without judgment. It is not a passive process, it takes effort. But paradoxically, mindfulness does not involve trying to get anywhere or feel anything special. It involves allowing yourself to be where you already are. Because of this inner busyness, we are liable to miss the texture of our life experience. We might be struck by the beauty of a sunset, but then a thought comes in, and we are no longer experiencing the sunset that is actually happening, but the sunset in our head, veiled by past memories and ideas. If you habitually run through your moments without being fully in them, you may miss the most precious experiences of your life because you were too busy, and your mind too encumbered to stop, to listen, to notice. This chronic state of unawareness can keep us from being in touch with our own bodies, creating physical problems we don't even know we are generating. When the mind is dominated by dissatisfaction and unawareness, it is difficult to feel calm or relaxed. We are driven by our likes and dislikes, totally unaware of the tyranny of our own thoughts. As Socrates said, the first step to knowing oneself is to understand something about this not knowing. Mindfulness is not an answer to all of life's problems, but it allows all of life's problems to be seen more clearly. One important domain we tend to ignore is our own body. Learning to listen to its messages is vital to improving your health. Even relaxation can be elusive if you are unaware of your body. To release tension, you first have to know it is there. One Vietnam veteran with chronic back pain put the dilemma in a nutshell. When his doctor told him to relax, he responded, "Doc, telling me to relax is about as useful as telling me to be a surgeon." He knew he needed to relax, but he had to learn how to relax. Once he started meditating, he was able to. Active collaboration is essential in almost all forms of medical treatment, especially for chronic conditions where medicine has no cures. Taking responsibility for your own health by cultivating your inner resources for healing is where the meditation practice comes in. It catalyzes the work of healing. To relieve the expectation that meditation is something mystical, our first introduction is to eat 3 raisins, one at a time, with full attention. We observe the raisin as if we have never seen one before, feeling its texture, seeing its colors, smelling it. We bring it to our lips, chew it slowly, and experience its actual taste. The response is invariably positive. People report that even one raisin can be satisfying and that they become aware of their automatic, uncontrolled impulses around food. This little exercise illustrates that when you start to pay attention, your relationship to things changes. This is non-conceptual knowing, or awareness itself, a capacity you already have. This leads to the recognition that the present moment is the only time any of us ever has to perceive, to learn, to act, to change, to heal, to love. To embark on this practice, it is helpful to introduce simplicity into your life, to set aside time for formal meditation, focusing on the basic experiences of breathing, bodily sensations, and the flow of thoughts. This formal practice will begin to spill over into your daily life. We practice mindfulness by remembering to be present in all our waking moments. We learn to be aware of our fears and our pain, stabilized by a connection to something deeper within ourselves. The word practice here is used in a special way. It means being in the present on purpose. The means and the end are the same. We are not trying to get somewhere else, but only working at being where we already are. Our journey toward greater health and well-being is a natural progression. Awareness, insight, and health ripen on their own if we are willing to pay attention in the moment and remember that we have only moments to live. Chapter 2. The Foundations of Mindfulness Practice, Attitudes and Commitment. Cultivating the healing power of mindfulness requires more than mechanically following a recipe. True learning happens only when the mind is open and receptive. In practicing mindfulness, you must bring your whole being to the process. The attitude with which you undertake the practice is the soil in which you will cultivate your ability to calm your mind, relax your body, and see more clearly. If this attitudinal soil is depleted by low energy or commitment, or polluted by forcing yourself to feel relaxed and demanding that something happen, nothing will grow. Cultivating meditative awareness requires a new way of looking at learning. The ingrained habit of trying to control things to make them turn out our way is antithetical to the work of awareness. Healing requires receptivity and acceptance, attuning to wholeness that cannot be forced, just as you cannot force yourself to sleep. You can only create the right conditions and then let go. Coming to the practice with a cynical attitude of "this won't work" will likely become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Coming as a true believer, certain that mindfulness is the answer, will likely lead to disappointment when you realize it requires effort and consistency. In the stress reduction clinic, we find that those with a skeptical but open-minded attitude do the best. The attitude you bring to the practice will largely determine its long-term value. Consciously cultivating certain attitudes can be very helpful. They are a way of directing and channeling your energies into the work of growing and healing. 7 attitudinal factors constitute the major pillars of mindfulness practice as taught in MBSR: non-judging, patience, a beginner's mind, trust, non-striving, acceptance, and letting go. These attitudes are not independent of each other. Working on any one will rapidly lead you to the others. Together, they form the foundation of a strong meditation practice. Mindfulness is cultivated by paying close attention to your moment-to-moment experience without getting caught up in your ideas, opinions, likes, and dislikes. This is the attitude of non-judging. It allows us to see things more as they are, rather than through our distorted lenses. To adopt this stance, you must become aware of the constant stream of judging that dominates our minds. We label everything as good, bad, or neutral, locking ourselves into automatic reactions and making it difficult to find peace or discernment. The first step is to become aware of these automatic judgments. When practicing mindfulness, you don't have to stop the mind from judging. All that is required is to be aware of it happening. When you find your mind saying, "This is boring," simply recognize it as a judgmental thought and gently return your awareness to your breath. Patience is a form of wisdom. It demonstrates an understanding that sometimes things must unfold in their own time, like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. We cultivate patience toward our own minds and bodies, giving ourselves room to have whatever experiences arise: judgment, tension, agitation, because they are our reality in that moment. The mind has a mind of its own, often wandering into the past or future, and patience helps us accept this tendency without getting caught up in it. To be patient is to be completely open to each moment, accepting it in its fullness. The richness of present moment experience is the richness of life itself. To see it, we must cultivate a beginner's mind, a mind willing to see everything as if for the first time. We tend to take the ordinary for granted, our beliefs about what we know, preventing us from seeing things as they really are. By resolving to bring a beginner's mind to each practice, we free ourselves from the expectations of past experiences and remain receptive to new possibilities. Each moment is unique. Try cultivating this in your daily life. The next time you see a familiar person, Ask yourself if you are seeing them with fresh eyes or only through the veil of your own thoughts and opinions. Developing a basic trust in yourself and your feelings is an integral part of meditation. It is far better to trust your own authority, even if you make mistakes, than to always look outside yourself for guidance. If something doesn't feel right, honor your feelings. This attitude of trusting your own basic wisdom is completely contrary to the spirit of imitation. The only hope is to become more fully yourself. In practicing mindfulness, you are taking responsibility for being yourself and learning to listen to and trust your own being. Almost everything we do is for a purpose, but in meditation, this can be a real obstacle. Ultimately, meditation is a non-doing. It has no goal other than for you to be yourself. This is the paradox of non-striving. If you sit down to meditate with the goal of getting relaxed or enlightened, you introduce the idea that you are not okay right now. This undermines the cultivation of mindfulness, which is simply about paying attention to whatever is happening. The invitation is to embrace whatever you experience and hold it in awareness. The best way to achieve your goals in the meditative domain is to back off from striving for results and instead focus on seeing and accepting things as they are. Acceptance means seeing things as they actually are in the present. In our daily lives, we waste a lot of energy denying and resisting what is already a fact. Acceptance is not passive resignation. It is a willingness to see things as they are, which sets the stage for acting appropriately. It is the precondition for healing. You have to accept yourself as you are before you can really change. In meditation, we cultivate acceptance by taking each moment as it comes, being with it fully, without imposing our ideas about what we should be feeling. The attitude of letting go, or non-attachment, is fundamental. When we pay attention to our inner experience, we discover that there are certain thoughts and feelings the mind wants to hold on to, and others it tries to get rid of. In meditation, we intentionally put aside this tendency. Letting go is a way of letting things be. We do it every night when we go to sleep. If you can go to sleep, you are already an expert in letting go. Now you just need to practice applying this skill in waking situations as well. In addition to these 7 foundational attitudes, there are other qualities of mind and heart that contribute to the embodiment of mindfulness, including non-harming, generosity, gratitude, and compassion. These arise naturally from paying attention to how we conduct ourselves. Purposefully cultivating these attitudes, along with a strong commitment and self-discipline, is essential for developing a high degree of mindfulness. In the MBSR classroom, everybody practices 45 minutes a day, 6 days a week. It is a commitment similar to that required in athletic training. It requires a major lifestyle change, but one's own suffering is usually motivation enough. We who teach in the clinic see meditation as an integral part of our own lives. We are not asking our patients to do something we don't do ourselves. To tap into this power, you must set aside a particular block of time each day to practice. This is a profound and positive lifestyle change. Once you make the commitment, self-discipline comes in carrying it out. Regular formal meditation is not as hard as you might think. Ultimately, you have to decide for yourself why you are making such a commitment. Some people resist taking time for themselves, feeling it is selfish. But restoring your energy reserves can hardly be considered selfish. Intelligent is a more apt description. When you start practicing, you will find your own best time. Practicing in the morning often has a positive influence on the rest of the day. Your practice will only be as powerful as your motivation to dispel the fog of your own lack of awareness. Commitment is of greatest value when you are caught in confusion, fatigue, or depression. It keeps you engaged in the process. Most people who come to the clinic are seeking peace of mind. To achieve this, you must kindle a personal vision of what you really want for yourself, a vision of vibrancy, kindness, or wisdom, and keep that vision alive. The price of wholeness is a total commitment to recognizing your intrinsic wholeness. You are already perfect just as you are. The present moment is the perfect moment for opening to this dimension of your being. Carl Jung put it this way: the attainment of wholeness requires one to stake one's whole being. Nothing less will do. With this perspective, we are now ready to explore the practice itself. Chapter 3: The Power of Breathing, Your Unsuspected Ally in the Healing Process. Our organism pulsates with the rhythms of its ancestry, a pulsation intrinsic to all life. From the beating of bacterial cilia to the circadian rhythms of our own bodies, these rhythms are embedded within the larger rhythms of the planet itself: the tides, the seasons, the cycles of night and day. Our very bodies are joined with the planet in a continual rhythmic exchange of matter and energy. It has been calculated that, on average, every 7 years, all the atoms in our body are replaced by others from outside us. What am I, if little of the substance of my body is the same in any decade of my life? This exchange happens most fundamentally through breathing. With each breath, we exchange carbon dioxide from within for oxygen from without. If this process is interrupted for more than a few minutes, the brain suffers irreversible damage. Without the breath, we die. The breath has an important partner in this work, the heart. This amazing muscle never stops pumping, circulating oxygen-rich blood to all the cells of the body and returning carbon dioxide to the lungs to be discharged on the out-breath. This is the pulse of life in us, the rhythm of the primordial sea internalized. From the moment we are born to the moment we die, we breathe. The rhythm of our breathing varies with our activities and feelings, quickening with exertion or upset, slowing during relaxation or sleep. While we have some conscious control, the breath keeps going, day and night, year in and year out. We usually take it completely for granted, unless something prevents us from breathing normally, or unless we start to meditate. The breath plays an extremely important role in meditation and healing. Its fundamental pulsations are so intimately connected with the experience of being alive that they are a fruitful focus. The breath is easier to be aware of than the heartbeat, and its constantly changing rhythmic nature teaches us to get comfortable with change. Our breathing is also a convenient anchor for ongoing awareness in our daily lives. It is always with us, and tuning into it brings us right into the here and now, anchoring our awareness in a fundamental, flowing life process. Some people have trouble breathing when they get anxious, their breath becoming faster and shallower until they hyperventilate. This can bring on lightheadedness and a feeling of not getting enough air, which can lead to panic. When patients who suffer from hyperventilation come to the stress reduction clinic, they are asked to focus on their breathing. For many, this very act produces anxiety, but with perseverance, most regain confidence. A 37-year-old firefighter named Greg came to the clinic with a year-long history of hyperventilation episodes. His problem started when he was overcome by smoke in a burning building. Afterward, he was unable to put on his gas mask without his breathing becoming rapid and shallow. The first week of practicing the body scan, which involves focusing on the breath, was torture for him. He saw his breath as an undependable enemy. Yet after just 2 weeks of doggedly working with his breathing, he discovered he could put on his mask and go into burning buildings again. As he spent time simply watching his breath, he became more confident in it. He began to know what his breathing actually felt like, and got less caught up in his thoughts and fears about it. He came to see that his breathing was not his enemy, and that he could even use it to relax. It was not a big jump for him to practice being aware of his breathing at other times of the day. One day at a fire, he purposefully focused on his breathing as he put on the mask, accepting the feeling of it just as he had learned to accept his breath during practice. He discovered it was okay. From that day on, he was able to go into burning buildings without panicking. He never had another hyperventilation episode. The easiest and most effective way to begin cultivating mindfulness is to simply focus your attention on your breathing. You can focus on the sensations at the nostrils, the chest, or the belly. No matter which location you choose, the idea is to be aware of the sensations and hold them in the forefront of your awareness from moment to moment. This means feeling the breath, not thinking about it. There is no need to control it. Trying to do so is counterproductive. The effort is simply to be aware of the feeling of each in-breath and each out-breath. In MBSR, we generally focus on the sensations of breathing at the belly, as this tends to be particularly calming. Professionals like singers and martial artists know the value of breathing from the belly. It grounds awareness in a region of the body far from the agitations of the thinking mind. The breath can serve as a reliable and ever-present anchor for our attention, allowing us to drop below the surface agitations of the mind into relaxation and calmness, without having to change anything at all. When you touch base with that part of your mind that is already calm and stable, your perspective immediately changes. We are learning to inhabit awareness moment by moment and breath by breath. When you practice mindfulness of breathing, you can close your eyes to deepen your concentration or keep them open with a soft, unfocused gaze. Bring the same sensitivity to feeling your breathing that you brought to eating the raisins. Many patients find it beneficial to breathe in a particular way that involves relaxing the belly, known as diaphragmatic breathing. The diaphragm is a large umbrella-shaped muscle that, when contracted, draws air into the lungs. If the muscles of the belly are tight, the diaphragm cannot descend very far, and breathing will be shallow. In diaphragmatic breathing, the idea is to intentionally relax the belly, allowing the diaphragm to go down farther and the lungs to fill with more air. The full cycle of breathing becomes slower and deeper. If you are unaccustomed to this, it may be frustrating at first, but with perseverance, it will come naturally. When surveyed, a majority of patients who have been out of the stress reduction program for years say that the single most important thing they got out of it was the breathing. This is amusing, since they were all breathing long before they came. The answer is that once you start meditating, breathing is no longer just breathing. Our relationship to it changes dramatically. When we are mindful of our breathing, it automatically helps us establish greater calmness. We become more aware of our thoughts and feelings, able to see them more clearly, and with this awareness comes a feeling of having more room to move, of being free to choose effective responses in stressful situations rather than being thrown off balance by knee-jerk reactions. The very simplicity of the practice gives it its power. The breath is simply a useful object of attention for cultivating our ability to dwell in awareness. Breathing as a primary object of attention can catalyze the discovery of the overriding importance of awareness itself. Breathing is no longer just breathing. Held in awareness, it is transformed. There are two major ways of practicing mindfulness of breathing: a formal discipline of making a specific time to stop all activity and dwell in moment-to-moment awareness of the breath, and an informal practice of being mindful of it from time to time during the day. The two complement and enrich each other. If you keep at it, the day will soon come when you will look upon your breathing as an old, familiar friend and a powerful ally in the healing process, and in living your life as if it really mattered, moment by moment and breath by breath. Chapter 4, Sitting Meditation, Nourishing the Domain of Being. In the first MBSR class, each person shares why they have come to the program. Linda, a very overweight woman, described feeling as if a large truck were always right on her heels. The image was vivid and relatable. When I asked what the truck was, she responded that it was her impulses, her cravings, her desires, in a word, her mind. Her mind was the truck, always pushing her, allowing no rest, no peace. Our behavior is often driven by the mind's play of likes and dislikes. It is constantly seeking satisfaction, trying to get what it wants and ward off what it fears. As a consequence, our days become filled with things that just have to be done, and we run around desperately trying to do them all, too rushed and anxious to enjoy the doing. We live immersed in a world of constant doing, rarely in touch with the world of being. To get back in touch with being is not that difficult. Moments of mindfulness are moments of peace and stillness. Formal meditation can provide a refuge of sanity and stability, a way of stopping the headlong momentum of doing and remembering who you are. The practice can give you the strength to let the doing come out of your grounding in the domain of being. Meditation is really a non-doing, an endeavor that emphasizes being where you already are. It takes a while to get comfortable with just being with your own mind. It's like meeting an old friend for the first time in years. Ironically, we all seem to need to remind ourselves of who we are. If we don't, the momentum of unbridled doing can carry us for decades, even to the grave, without our quite knowing that we have only moments to live. This is why we make a special time each day for formal meditation practice. It is a way of stopping, of nourishing the domain of being for a change. Making time for non-doing may at first feel artificial, just one more thing to do. But once you see the critical need to nourish your being, to calm your heart and mind, the commitment to make that time a priority develops naturally. We call the heart of the formal practice sitting meditation. Mindful sitting is different from ordinary sitting. The difference is your awareness. To practice, we make a special time and place for non-doing. We consciously adopt an alert and relaxed posture so we can feel comfortable without moving, and then we simply reside in the present. An erect and dignified posture with the head, neck, and back aligned vertically allows the breath to flow easily and is the physical counterpart to the inner attitudes we are cultivating. We usually practice on a chair or on the floor. Whether you choose a chair or a cushion, posture is very important. It is an outward support for cultivating an inner attitude of dignity, patience, and self-acceptance. Once we have assumed our posture, we bring our attention to our breathing. We feel it come in, we feel it go out. We dwell in the present, moment by moment, breath by breath. It is simple, but it is not easy. When you try sitting with nothing to do but watch your breath, you will probably notice that part of you doesn't want to stay for very long. This is inevitable. It is at this point that the work of self-observation becomes particularly interesting. Normally, when the mind moves, the body follows. But in sitting meditation, we uncouple this connection. If you are genuinely committed to being more peaceful, you might wonder why your mind is so quick to be bored and your body so restless. In meditation, we don't try to answer such questions. We just observe the impulse. Instead of jumping up, we gently but firmly bring our attention back to the breath, accepting each moment as it is without reacting to it. The basic instruction is simple. Observe the breath as it flows in and out. Whenever you find that your attention has been carried elsewhere, simply note it, then let go, and gently escort your attention back to the rising and falling of your belly. Each time you become aware that your mind has wandered, the instruction is to first note briefly what is on your mind, and then gently bring your attention back. By doing so, you are training your mind to be less reactive and more stable, cultivating your natural ability to concentrate. Working regularly with the resistance of your own mind builds inner strength, patience, and non-judgment. One big source of distracting impulses is your body. If you sit still for a while, your body will become uncomfortable. Instead of automatically shifting, in formal sitting meditation, it is useful to resist the first impulse. We direct our attention to the sensations of discomfort and mentally welcome them. These sensations become part of our present moment experience, worthy objects of observation. The pain in your knee or the ache in your back, rather than being distractions, can be included in the field of your awareness. This cultivation of flexibility, of welcoming whatever comes up, is one of the most valuable features of mindfulness meditation. It is not the breath that is most important, but awareness itself, which can be of any aspect of your experience. Aside from physical discomfort, the primary thing that carries your attention away is thinking. The mind does not necessarily quiet down just because you have decided to meditate. What happens is that we realize we are immersed in a seemingly never-ending stream of thoughts. This discovery can be a revelation, the realization that you are not your thoughts. This means you can consciously choose how to relate to them. In the early stages, thought is constantly pulling our attention away from the breath. The things you think about may be important or not, but they seem to lead a life of their own. When you notice your mind has wandered, it is helpful to remind yourself that letting go of thoughts doesn't mean pushing them away. It means simply letting them be here as they are, as we once again place the breath center stage. During meditation, we intentionally treat all our thoughts as if they are of equal value, bringing awareness to them when they arise, and then returning our attention to the breath, regardless of their content or emotional charge. We are not trying to stop our thoughts, but simply making room for them, using the breath as an anchor. Every period of formal meditation practice is different. Sometimes you may feel calm, At other times, the thoughts and emotions may be so strong that all you can do is watch them. Meditation is not so concerned with how much thinking is going on as it is with how much room you are making for it. It is remarkably liberating to see that your thoughts are just thoughts, not you or reality. Recognizing your thoughts as thoughts can free you from the distorted reality they often create. This liberation comes directly out of the meditation practice itself. As the mind develops stability, we strengthen our ability to concentrate and be calm, coming to know and accept ourselves as we actually are. This is an expression of our innate wisdom and compassion. The sitting meditation practice is usually introduced in the second week of the MBSR curriculum, starting with 10 minutes and gradually increasing to 45 minutes at a stretch. Over the weeks, we also expand the range of experiences we invite into the field of awareness, including body sensations, sounds, and the thought process itself. This way of practicing, known as choiceless awareness or open presence, requires a degree of stability that is best cultivated by first choosing one object, most commonly the breath. When we introduce the sitting meditation in class, there is usually a lot of fidgeting as people get accustomed to the idea of not doing. But after a few weeks, the collective stillness in the room is deafening. Before long, most people discover that it can be quite exhilarating to meditate, an effortless opening into the stillness of being. These are true moments of wholeness, accessible to all of us. Chapter 5, Being in Your Body, the Body Scan Meditation. It is amazing that we can be simultaneously preoccupied with our body's appearance and completely out of touch with it. As a society, we are overwhelmingly concerned with appearances, and bodies are used in advertisements to sell everything. Advertisers capitalize on our strong identification with body images, generating in us a desire to look a certain way to feel special, younger, or happier. Much of this preoccupation comes from a deep-seated insecurity. Many of us grew up feeling awkward or unattractive, obsessed with an ideal look that someone else had and we didn't. This can lead to a feeling of inadequacy that persists into adulthood. Many adults feel their body is too fat, too short, or too old, never feeling completely at home in it. As we get older, this is compounded by the awareness of our body's aging. These deep feelings stem from a restricted way of looking at our body in the first place. Our thoughts limiting the range of feelings we allow ourselves to experience. When we put energy into actually experiencing our body, without getting caught up in judgmental thinking, our whole view of it can change. To begin with, what our bodies can do is remarkable. We usually take these abilities for granted until we are injured or sick. So before we convince ourselves that our bodies are not right, shouldn't we get more in touch with how wonderful it is to have a body in the first place? The way to do this is to tune into your body and be mindful of it without judging it. When you become mindful of your breathing, feeling the belly move or the air pass through the nostrils, you are tuning into the sensations your body generates. You are reclaiming your life in that very moment. Your experience is embodied. One powerful meditation practice we use in MBSR to reestablish contact with the body is the body scan. It is an effective method for developing both concentration and flexibility of attention. It is most commonly practiced by lying on your back and moving your mind systematically through the different regions of your body. We start with the toes of the left foot and slowly move our attention up the leg, inhabiting each region in full awareness, tuning in to any and all sensations. Once we reach the hip, we move to the toes of the right foot and repeat the process. From there, we move up through the torso, the arms, the neck, and finally the head. We wind up breathing through an imaginary hole in the top of our head, letting the breath move through the entire body. By the time we have completed the body scan, it can feel as if the entire body has become transparent, as if there is nothing but breath flowing freely across its boundaries. We are not trying to achieve this experience. In the spirit of non-doing, we are simply attending to our experience of the body moment by moment. The idea is to actually feel and inhabit each region, breathing into and out from it a few times before letting go and moving on. As you do this, the muscles in that region literally let go too, releasing much of their accumulated tension. We practice the body scan intensively for the first 4 weeks of the MBSR program. It is the first formal mindfulness practice our patients engage in, and it provides the foundation for all the other practices. It is in the body scan that they first learn to keep their attention focused for an extended period, nurturing greater stability of mind, calmness, and mindfulness. It is often the catalyst for their first experience of well-being and timelessness in meditation. The challenge is to bring a beginner's mind to it each time, letting go of all expectations and preconceptions. Every time you practice, the meditation is different, and you are different too. The inner work of healing is greatly enhanced by the ability to place your attention anywhere in your body and purposefully direct energy there in the form of kindness and acceptance. The body scan is a perfect vehicle for developing this sensitivity and intimacy with your own body. For many, it provides the first positive experience of their body in years. It is also a practice of cultivating non-judgmental awareness. When the mind wanders, we simply bring it back to the part of the body we were working with. Mary, a participant in an early cycle of the program, religiously practiced the body scan every day. She reported feeling blocked when she got to her neck and head. When she tried to flow her attention around the blockage, she heard the word genitals for the first time while scanning her pelvic region, triggering a repressed memory of having been sexually molested by her father from the age of 5 to 9. The flashback revealed a traumatic history that had been repressed for over 50 years. A history that included her father's fatal heart attack in her presence and the subsequent beating from her mother, who blamed her for his death. Her body had suffered for years from a number of worsening chronic problems. By the time she finished the program, Mary was sleeping through the night, her blood pressure had come down, and her pain had significantly decreased. Her newfound awareness also led her to join an incest survivors group and even to speak to new MBSR classes about her experience. Through it all, she maintained a remarkable acceptance and equanimity. Her physicians were amazed at her ability to handle stressful medical procedures through her meditation practice. She wound up teaching us all about what is really important in life. Over the years, we have seen others with similar stories, suggesting a possible connection between repressing childhood trauma and future somatic disease. Mary's experience is not meant to imply that everyone who practices the body scan will have flashbacks. Such experiences are rare. People find the body scan beneficial because it reconnects their conscious mind to the feeling states of their body, helping them to feel more relaxed and at home in their bodies. Initial challenges in practicing the body scan, such as not feeling anything in certain parts of the body or being overwhelmed by pain, can all provide important messages. If you don't feel anything, then not feeling anything is your experience in that moment. If you are in pain, you can work with it by either continuing to scan through it or by letting your attention go directly to the region of greatest intensity, breathing into and out from the pain itself. The body scan can be thought of as a metaphorical zone purification of the body, a process that promotes healing by restoring a feeling of wholeness. The spirit of the practice is one of non-striving. Through repeated practice, we come to grasp the reality of our body as a whole in the present moment. This experience of wholeness can transcend your problems and is nurtured every time you breathe out from a particular region and let it go. The key point in the body scan is to maintain awareness in every moment, not to force anything, and not to turn away. The quality of your attention and your willingness to just feel what is here to be felt is more important than any specific outcome. This paradoxical approach, practicing without trying to get anywhere, invites people to explore non-striving and self-acceptance as ways of being. The meditative view is that it is only through the acceptance of the actuality of the present that change, growth, and healing can come about. In its truest expression, meditation goes beyond notions of success and failure. Ultimately, practicing the body scan is just a way of being with your body as it is, a way of being with yourself as you are in this moment, a way of being whole right now. Chapter 6, Cultivating Strength, Balance, and Flexibility. Yoga is meditation. Bringing mindfulness to any activity, transforms it into a kind of meditation. Much of the practice is simply a remembering, a reminding yourself to be fully awake, not lost in the veils of your thinking mind. The words remember and remind imply connections that already exist but need to be acknowledged anew. To remember is to reconnect with a membership to which one already belongs. When we remember to pay attention, to be in the present, we are already awake in that moment. The membership completes itself as we remember our wholeness. A major reason people take so quickly to meditation is that it reminds them of what they already knew but had forgotten, that they are already whole. We remember wholeness so readily because it is always within us. When you reconnect with being, even for a few moments, you feel like you are at home, no matter what problems you face. Part of this feeling is being at home in your body. All the work we do in MBSR involves rebodying. Bodies are subject to inevitable breakdown, but they do so sooner and heal less completely if they are not cared for and listened to. Step number 1 in caring for your body is to inhabit it with full awareness. Tuning into your breathing and the sensations in your body is a practical way to stay in close touch with it and act on its messages. The body scan is a powerful form of rebodying, and for the most part, your body can't but soften in response. There are many ways to practice being in your body. One of the most powerful is Hatha Yoga, the third major formal meditation practice we use in MBSR. It consists of gentle stretching, strengthening, and balancing exercises done slowly with moment-to-moment awareness. Many participants are drawn to the relaxation and increased flexibility that come from regular practice. It also allows them to realize that the posture for the body scan is itself a yoga posture, known as the corpse pose. It is said to be the most difficult posture because it is so challenging to be fully awake, to die to the past and the future, and thus to be fully alive in the present moment. Aside from being a powerful way to explore the body, mindful yoga is an extremely effective way to learn about yourself and experience yourself as whole. Done mindfully, it is meditation. In MBSR, we practice yoga with the same attitude we bring to sitting meditation and the body scan, without striving or forcing, accepting our body as we find it. While stretching or balancing, we learn to work at our limits with moment-to-moment awareness, residing in the creative space between not challenging the body and pushing it too far. This is a far cry from most exercise classes, which tend to emphasize progress and pushing. Most of us need permission to switch from the doing mode to the being mode. To locate and inhabit the domain of being, we need to mobilize our powers of attention and awareness while exercising. Even physical therapy sessions go much better when patients use mindfulness of breathing. When the domain of being is actively cultivated, what is traditionally thought of as exercise is transformed into meditation. In MBSR, the ground rule is that every individual must consciously take responsibility for reading their own body's signals, always erring on the side of being conservative. Each person's body is different, and the only way to find out about those limits is to explore them carefully and mindfully. What you learn is that no matter the state of your body, when you bring awareness to it and work at your limits, those limits tend to recede over time. But we are doing it not to get somewhere, but to be where we already are. When there is something wrong with one part of your body, there is a tendency to back off and not use any of it. This is a sensible short-term protection mechanism, but it can evolve into a long-term sedentary lifestyle. Such thinking can lead to a rigid and fixed view of oneself as out of shape or disabled, leading to what is sometimes called illness behavior. Physical therapists have two relevant maxims. If it's physical, it's therapy, and if you don't use it, you lose it. The body is never in a fixed state. It is constantly changing. The decline that comes with disuse is technically known as disuse atrophy. Yoga is a wonderful form of exercise because it is gentle, can be practiced at any level of conditioning, and counteracts this process. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about yoga is how much energy you feel after you do it. People who found the body scan difficult are thrilled to discover they can easily drop into deep feelings of relaxation and embodied presence with the yoga. I do yoga almost every day. It always feels like I know how my body is today because I have spent time with it, nourishing it, strengthening it, and listening to it. Yoga is a Sanskrit word that literally means yoke. The practice of yoga is the practice of unifying body and mind, of realizing connectedness and wholeness through disciplined practice. The trouble with yoga is that talking about it doesn't help you to do it. Instructions from a book can't convey the feeling of what it is like. That is why we strongly recommend using guided practices to get started. In MBSR, we do the yoga very slowly as a moment-by-moment mindful exploration of the body. Posture is very important, as it can have immediate effects on your mental and emotional state. Every time you intentionally assume a different posture, you are literally changing your inner perspective as well. Feel free to skip postures that aren't appropriate for you. When you practice, you should be on the lookout for the many subtle ways in which your perspective on your body, your thoughts, and your whole sense of self can change. This kind of gentle, mindful yoga is a lifetime practice, a veritable laboratory in which to get to know your body in ever deeper ways. Chapter 7: Walking Meditation. One simple way of bringing awareness into your daily life is to practice mindful walking, or walking meditation. This means bringing your attention to the actual experience of walking as you are engaged in it. Simply walking and knowing that you are walking. It does not mean looking at your feet, but as with anything, you soon discover that nothing is quite as simple as it appears. We carry our mind with us when we walk, so we are usually absorbed in our own thoughts. We are hardly ever just walking. Usually, we walk to get from one place to another. The mind thinks about the destination and presses the body into service to deliver it. The body becomes the chauffeur of the mind. If the mind is in a hurry, the body rushes. Thoughts of all kinds cascade through the mind, just as they do when we are sitting still. As a rule, all this happens without the least awareness on our part. Walking meditation involves intentionally attending to the experience of walking itself. We begin by standing still, becoming aware of the body as a whole. At a certain point, we become aware of the impulse to begin walking, and we note that impulse. We become aware of the shifting of weight, the lifting of a foot, its movement forward, and its contact with the ground. We walk step by step with full awareness of the gait cycle, a continually controlled falling forward and catching oneself. When the mind wanders, we simply notice what is on our mind and gently bring it back to the walking. To deepen concentration, we do not look around, but keep our gaze focused in front of us. It is an internal observation of the felt sensations of walking. Mindful walking need not be somber. It can be approached with a light touch and a sense of ease. It is nothing special, just walking and knowing you are walking, and thus also very special. We tend to take the ability to walk for granted, but it's an amazing balancing act. It is a great marvel, one we hardly ever appreciate until injury or illness prevents us from doing it. Most importantly, in walking meditation, we are not trying to get anywhere. We are simply experimenting with being where we already are, with this step, in this moment. To reinforce this, in the formal practice, we walk in circles or back and forth in lanes. The mind may condemn the exercise as stupid, or it may start to play games with the pace. But if your commitment is strong, you will quickly become aware of these impulses and return your attention to your feet and legs, and to the whole body walking. You can practice at any pace, from very slow to very fast. When moving quickly, you can shift your awareness to a sense of your body as a whole moving through space. Even rushing, you can be mindful if you can remember. To begin a formal practice, it is helpful to form the intention to do it for a specific period of time in a place where you can walk slowly back and forth without being observed. One young woman, so nervous she couldn't tolerate any stillness, found that walking meditation became her lifeline. It anchored her mind at a time when things were totally out of control. It can be just as profound a practice as sitting or the body scan. When our children were babies, I did a lot of enforced walking meditation late at night, holding one of them on my shoulder. The reality was that I had to be up, so it made sense to decide to be up completely, to practice being fully present. It brought me into much closer contact with my children. There are probably circumstances in your own life where you have to be walking, whether you like it or not. These can be wonderful occasions to bring awareness to your walking, transforming it from a dull chore into something rich and nurturing. Once you have practiced formally, you can easily practice informal mindfulness of walking in many different circumstances, such as when you are running errands. Bringing awareness to these routine tasks can short-circuit the automatic pilot mode, making them more vivid and interesting, leaving you calmer and less exhausted. Many of our patients who walk for exercise find they enjoy it much more when they practice being aware of their breathing and their feet with every step. John, a 44-year-old stockbroker with a serious heart condition, was a wreck when he came to the program. His diagnosis had sent him into a deep depression and self-destructive behaviors. When he started, he was incapable of walking for more than 5 minutes. By the time he ended, he was walking mindfully for 45 minutes every day before work. His health improved dramatically. His cardiologist told me that mindfulness is the perfect thing for John. When he pays attention to every aspect of his life, he does very well. In summary, anytime you find yourself walking is a good time to practice mindfulness. But sometimes it's good to find an isolated spot and do it formally as well, a bit more slowly, back and forth, step by step, moment by moment, walking gently on the earth, in step with your life, being exactly where you are. Chapter 8, A Day of Mindfulness. It is a beautiful New England morning in early June. At 8:15 a.m., people start arriving at the hospital, looking more like campers than medical patients with their sleeping bags, pillows, and blankets. By 8:45, there are 120 people in the large sunny conference room, some sitting on chairs, others on colorful meditation cushions. Among them are about 15 graduates of the stress reduction program, including Sam, a 74-year-old retired truck driver, and his son, Ken. They've come back for a booster. Sam, who was a tense, angry man when he first entered my class 2 years ago, now looks relaxed and jovial, grinning from ear to ear. He tells me, "John, I'm a different person," and Ken agrees, saying his father is no longer hostile and hard to reach. The rest of the people are in their 6th week of the MBSR program. This all-day session is an integral part of the course. There are several physicians in the room, including a senior cardiologist, all here for themselves, dressed in sweatpants and cut-off jerseys. Norma Rosiello, who first came to the clinic as a pain patient, is also here. She now works as our secretary and receptionist, the heart of the clinic. When she first came, she was in constant pain from a condition she had had for 15 years. Through meditation, she was able to get her pain under control. She has come today on her own time to practice with us. At 9 o'clock, my colleague Saki Santarelli welcomes the group and invites them to sit. A wave of silence rises in the room as 120 people bring their attention to their breathing. It is a crescendo of stillness that always moves me. So begins 6 hours of silent mindfulness practice. Saki explains the ground rules for the day: no talking and no eye contact. These rules will allow us to go more deeply into the practice and conserve our energy. He stresses that whatever arises during the day, physical pain, anxiety, boredom, guilt, becomes the curriculum. The silence and ban on eye contact will support this process of looking into and accepting ourselves. We can't complain or comment. We can only practice being with things as they are. Saki reminds us that today is a day to be with ourselves in a way we usually don't have time for. Today there will be no props to distract us. The invitation is to be with whatever we are feeling and to let go of all expectations, including the one that we should have a relaxing and pleasant day. After Saki's talk, we all get down on the floor for an hour of yoga. We do it slowly, gently, mindfully. I emphasize the importance of listening to our own bodies. Everybody does as much or as little as they feel comfortable with, working at their limits with full awareness. After the yoga, we sit for 30 minutes, then walk mindfully for 10, then sit again for 20. Even lunch is in silence. During lunch, I notice one man reading a newspaper, despite our explicit ground rule. I smile to myself, observing my own self-righteous impulse to insist he do it our way and let it go. One year, we had a group of district court judges who ate lunch together on the lawn, in silence, and later commented on the special closeness they felt. The energy in the room today feels very crisp. The afternoon begins with a loving kindness and forgiveness meditation, which often has people sobbing, then more sitting and slow walking. We used to do crazy walking to keep the energy up, but over the years we have abandoned it in favor of the simple, compelling logic of the practice itself. Less is more. The longest sitting of the afternoon starts with the mountain meditation. We use the image of a mountain to remember our own strength and stability, to see the changes in our minds and bodies as internal weather patterns. And so the day unfolds. At 3 o'clock, we dissolve the silence. First, we gaze around the room, making eye contact. Then we find a partner and whisper together about our experiences of the day. The room buzzes like an industrious beehive. Afterward, we come together as a large group to share. One woman speaks of being able to forgive her husband for years of abuse, feeling that something is being healed inside her. Another wonders if it is always appropriate to forgive, realizing that for now, she needs to feel her anger. A graduate, Mark, says the practice helps him trust his body rather than exclusively his doctors, who told him he would no longer be able to do many things because of his spinal condition. He finds he is now able to do many of those things again. The day comes to an end with a final 15 minutes of silence. Sam still has a big grin on his face. Later in the week, in our regular classes, we discussed the all-day session. Bernice, who had been nervous about coming, shared her experience. She had almost decided not to come, but a last-ditch attempt at a body scan in the morning had relaxed her enough. During the day, she had felt panic arise 3 times, but each time she told herself she could leave if she had to, and the feeling subsided. In the afternoon, she felt peaceful, discovering for the first time that she could stay with her feelings without running from them. This was a thrilling discovery for her, as she suffers from Crohn's disease, and she had had none of her usual symptoms that day. Another woman, a young psychiatrist, spoke of feeling like she was slogging through mud, having to start over, again and again, from the bottom. We discussed the difference between starting over, which implies a fresh beginning in the present moment, and starting from the bottom, which carries a strong negative judgment. When she saw this, she laughed. The meditation practice is a perfect mirror, allowing us to see the problems our own thinking creates. In a moment of insight, her confusion and difficulty dissolved. Chapter 9. Really Doing What You're Doing, Mindfulness in Daily Life. Jackie returned home from the all-day intensive on Saturday, tired but feeling good. She was pleasantly surprised by how well she felt after 7.5 hours of simply being present with her own experience. Arriving home, she found a note from her husband saying he had gone overnight to their summer home. He knew she didn't like being alone. The prospect terrified her. Her first impulse was to call a friend. But in the middle of dialing, she stopped herself. "Why am I in such a rush to fill up this time?" she thought. "Why not really take seriously what those people in the stress reduction clinic are saying about living your moments fully?" She hung up and decided to let the momentum of her day of mindfulness continue. She would allow herself to be alone in her house for the first time in her adult life and just feel what it was like. It turned out to be a special time. Instead of loneliness and anxiety, she was filled with a joy that lasted all evening. She stayed up late, enjoying herself, and woke early the next morning, still feeling exuberant, to watch the sun come up. Jackie had made a very important discovery. In her mid-50s, she had discovered that all her time is really her own. The experience helped her see that all her moments are hers, available to be felt and lived if she chooses to. When we spoke, she was concerned she wouldn't be able to duplicate the feeling of peace. I reminded her that this concern was just another worried thought about the future, and that it had been her willingness to be in the present that had brought about her experience of inner peace in the first place. The discovery that she could be happy by herself came about because she had chosen to use the momentum she had built up in her meditation practice. She had caught herself thinking of filling up the time, and had chosen instead to dwell in the present. The happiness she experienced came from inside herself, released by her courage and her intention to bring awareness to her situation. The peacefulness Jackie experienced is something that can be felt in any moment if the commitment to practice mindfulness is strong. It is a great gift we can give ourselves, a way to reclaim our entire life rather than just living for vacations or other special times. The challenge is to make calmness, inner balance, and clear seeing a part of everyday life. In the same way that it is possible to be mindful whenever we are walking, we can attempt to bring moment-to-moment attention to the tasks, experiences, and encounters of ordinary living. If you can name something or even feel it, you can be mindful of it. Bringing mindfulness to an activity fleshes it out, making it more vivid, brighter, more real. Your formal mindfulness practice heightens your ability to encounter the whole of your life with moment-to-moment awareness. As you practice regularly, mindfulness will naturally spill over into all the contours of your daily life. You might find your mind altogether calmer and less reactive. You will find that it is actually enjoyable to be in the moment, even with ordinary tasks, such as washing the dishes. You come to see that you don't have to rush, because at the moment that you are doing the dishes, that is your life. If you miss these moments because your mind is somewhere else, you are shortchanging your life. If you are able to be present in the routine, daily activities of your life, you may find that you not only enjoy the process more, but are also more likely to have insights. In doing the dishes mindfully, you may come to see with great vividness the reality of impermanence. By inquiring into this ordinary routine, you may find that the whole world is represented in it. The dishes can become a mirror of your own mind. This is not about simply seeing that life is a stream of dirty dishes, but about really doing the dishes when you are doing them, being awake and alive as you do them. Take cleaning the house as another example. By making it into part of your meditation practice, this routine chore can become an entirely new experience. You may change how you clean the house because you have seen more deeply into your relationship to order and cleanliness, and into your own needs, priorities, and attachments. The important point to keep in mind is that each moment that you are alive is a moment that you can live fully, a moment not to be missed. Why not live life as if it really mattered? George does the grocery shopping for himself and his wife every week. He does it mindfully. He has to. With his chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, almost anything can send him into a severe episode of shortness of breath. Moment-to-moment awareness helps him to keep his body and breathing under control. George learned to practice mindfulness in a pulmonary rehabilitation program. For him, it has made a big difference in the quality of his life. He has learned to reduce the frequency of shortness of breath by bringing awareness to his breathing. He is acutely aware of his limits and tries to be mindful of his body and his breathing throughout the day. By doing the shopping for the family, George is actively meeting life's challenges rather than sitting at home and bemoaning his fate. Just as George found a way to make use of mindfulness in his day-to-day life, so might each one of us begin to take some responsibility for cultivating mindfulness in our own daily lives. When it comes right down to it, the challenge is to realize that this is it. Right now is my life. This realization gives rise to vital questions about our relationship to our own lives. For now, the important point is to grasp the value of bringing the practice of mindfulness into the conduct of our everyday lives. Is there any waking moment of your life that would not be richer and more alive for you if you were more fully awake for it while it was happening? Chapter 10. Getting started in the practice. If you have been experimenting with the suggestions made so far, you may be wondering how to best proceed in developing your own mindfulness meditation practice. Should you start with sitting or the body scan? How does yoga fit in? How often should you practice and for how long? This chapter provides specific recommendations for getting started based on the formal 8-week curriculum of the Stress Reduction Clinic. In this way, you can practice just as you would if you were enrolled in the clinic. It is important to understand that all the discussions of mindfulness, its applications, and its relationship to health are secondary to the regular cultivation of the meditation practice in your own life. Your engagement in the daily formal practice is the most fundamental element out of which everything else arises. In MBSR, we begin practicing in the very first class. The material in the rest of this book will be richer and make more sense if you are already at work cultivating mindfulness. If you are ready to make this commitment, this chapter will give you guidelines for how to proceed over the next 8 weeks. Remember the advice we give our patients. You don't have to like it, you just have to do it. By the time you have practiced for 8 weeks, you will have enough momentum and direct personal experience to keep going, perhaps for the rest of your life. The place to start, of course, is with your breathing. We recommend that at the very least, you practice paying attention to your breath every day for 5 or 10 minutes. The most important thing is to practice every day. Even 5 minutes of mindfulness can be very restorative. However, the requirement in the stress reduction clinic is a commitment to between 45 minutes and an hour of practice a day, 6 days a week, for at least 8 weeks. Making time for this is a significant lifestyle change. Nobody has an extra hour a day lying around, especially for non-doing. You have to actually make the time. Given the pain and suffering that may have brought you to this point, it is essential to make time for formal practice every day, as if your life depended on it. The guided mindfulness meditation practices on the CDs can be a powerful aid, allowing you to simply attend to what you are being asked to attend to, without having to remember what you are supposed to be doing. This is especially helpful since the practice is not about doing, but about being, which is much harder to remember when we are caught up in our own minds. For the first 2 weeks of your formal practice, we recommend you do the body scan every day. It takes approximately 45 minutes, though the invitation is always to reside in the timeless quality of the present moment. The overarching invitation is to fall awake, not to fall asleep. Let each time you come to the body scan be as if for the first time, letting go of all expectations. In addition to the body scan, practice mindfulness of breathing while sitting for 10 minutes at some other time during the day. For your informal practice, try bringing moment-to-moment awareness to one routine activity each week, such as taking a shower, and try to eat at least one meal mindfully each week. In weeks 3 and 4, start alternating the body scan one day with the first sequence of mindful hatha yoga postures the next. Remember to listen carefully to your body's messages and always err on the side of being conservative. Continue to practice mindfulness of breathing in the sitting posture, increasing the time from 15 minutes a day in week 3 to 30 minutes a day in week 4. For informal practice, try to be aware of one pleasant event a day in week 3 and one unpleasant or stressful event a day in week 4, jotting down your experience. In weeks 5 and 6, we recommend you stop doing the body scan and replace it with the 45-minute guided sitting meditation, alternating with the yoga. By this point, you are probably ready to sit for this length of time. This is also a good time to start practicing some walking meditation. After 4 or 5 weeks, many people feel ready to start crafting and personalizing their own meditation practice, using our guidelines merely as suggestions. In week 7, to encourage self-reliance, we dedicate the practice to working without the CDs, if at all possible. People devote a total of 45 minutes a day to a combination of sitting, yoga, and body scanning, deciding on the mix themselves. Some prefer to continue with the guidance, and that is not a problem. Our hope is that with time you will internalize the practice and be comfortable practicing on your own. In week 8, we come back to the CDs. This can be quite revealing, as you are likely to hear things you never heard before and perceive the deep structure of the practice in new ways. But now you are in charge of deciding which practices to engage in. By this point, you have at least some familiarity with all 4 of the formal practices and a knowledge base to call upon in particular circumstances. The 8th week brings us to the end of our formal recommendations and the beginning of your practicing on your own. We see the 8 weeks of MBSR as a launching platform for the rest of your life. The adventure simply continues. By this point, you will hopefully be firmly in the driver's seat, with enough familiarity and experience to guide your own mindfulness practice. The following sections will explore new ways of thinking about health and stress from a meditative perspective. We recommend that you keep to the practice schedule outlined above, so that as you read more about the process, it is actually unfolding simultaneously in your own life and in your own heart. Chapter 11, Introduction to the Paradigm. For the meditation practice to take root in your life, you will have to know why you are practicing. What will get you up early to sit in the present moment? What will motivate you to practice when the world of doing is beckoning? To sustain your commitment over years and decades, it is important to develop your own personal vision that can guide you and remind you of the value of this unusual course. This vision will be molded by your unique life circumstances and personal values, and it will also develop from your experience of the meditation practice itself, from letting everything become your teacher. Another element of your vision will come from your embeddedness in the world and your beliefs about how you fit into it. If your health is a major motivation, then your knowledge of your body, your perspective on what medicine can and cannot do, and your understanding of the role of the mind in health and healing will be important. The strength of your vision will depend on what you know in these areas and how much you are willing to learn. In MBSR, we try to inspire people to learn more about their own bodies and the role of the mind in health and illness as a fundamental element of their ongoing adventure in healing. The Stress Reduction Clinic and MBSR do not exist in a vacuum. They took shape in 1979 within the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. At that time, behavioral medicine was a new current within medicine, contributing to a rapid expansion of ideas about health and illness. This gave rise over time to a more comprehensive perspective known as integrative medicine, which recognizes the fundamental unity of mind and body. This has come to be called participatory medicine. This perspective is based on the view that all of us, by virtue of being alive, have deep interior resources for learning, growing, healing, and transformation. It also emphasizes the importance of patients being active participants in their own healthcare, learning more about health in general, and communicating more effectively with their doctors. Perhaps the most fundamental development in medicine over the past decades is the recognition that body and mind are not two separate domains. They are intimately interconnected and completely integrated. This transformation is sometimes referred to as a paradigm shift, a movement from one entire worldview to another. Not only medicine, but all of science is going through such a shift, searching for more comprehensive models that are truer to our understanding of the interconnectedness of space and time, matter and energy, mind and body. In this section, we will follow two major threads. The first has to do with the whole process of paying attention, how we see things, how we conceptualize our problems, and our ability to transcend the toxic effects of stress and illness. The second thread has to do with the new perspective developing from research in behavioral and integrative medicine, addressing how the mind and body interact to influence health and illness. Taken together, these two threads may help you expand your perspective on the value of cultivating greater mindfulness. However, if the information presented here is only assimilated by your thinking mind, it will be of little practical value. This section is meant to encourage a growing interest in and appreciation of the exquisite beauty and complexity of your own body and its remarkable ability to self-regulate and heal. The aim is not to give you detailed information about specialized disciplines, but to expand your perspective on who you are and on your relationship to the world, and to help you develop your own personal vision within which you can put the healing power of mindfulness to practical use in your own life. Chapter 12, Glimpses of Wholeness, Delusions of Separateness. Have you ever looked at a dog and really seen it in its total dogness? Children tend to think about things this way, their vision fresh, but our seeing can get tired. We just see a dog, our thoughts acting as a veil, preventing us from seeing things with fresh eyes. The categorizing mind quickly frames the perception and moves on. When my son was 2, he asked if there was a person inside our dog. I knew why he was asking. Sage was a real family member, a complete being. What could I say to him? Never mind dogs. What about a bird, a cat, or a tree? They are all quite miraculous when you truly apprehend them. All life is fascinating and beautiful when the veil of our routinized thinking lifts. There are many different ways of looking at anything. In one way, a dog is just a dog. At the same time, it is extraordinary. The dog doesn't change when you change the way you look. It is your mind that changes. When your mind changes, new possibilities arise. Everything changes when you can see fullness and connectedness, as well as individuality and separateness. Your thinking expands, and it can be a profoundly liberating experience. When you observe things through the lens of mindfulness, your very perceptions change. Ordinary experiences may suddenly be seen as extraordinary. Let's take eating as an example. It is an ordinary activity, but the fact that your body can digest food and derive energy from it is extraordinary. The process is exquisitely organized at every level. In fact, everything your body normally does is quite wonderful. Walking, seeing, talking, breathing, all are extraordinary capabilities that we usually take for granted. A little reflecting on your body will easily lead you to conclude that it does wondrous things. Our well-being depends entirely on the integrated functioning of all our senses, muscles, nerves, and organs. Our bodies are undeniably self-organizing and self-healing at every level. This is one reason why we see the participants in MBSR classes as miraculous beings. It turns out, we all are. The body maintains its inner balance through finely tuned feedback loops that interconnect and integrate all aspects of the organism. When you exert yourself, your heart automatically pumps more blood to your muscles. If you sweat, you will feel thirsty, ensuring the lost fluid is replaced. If interconnectedness is crucial for physical health, it is equally important psychologically and socially. Our senses allow us to connect with external reality and organize a coherent impression of the world, to function in psychological space. At each level of our being, there is a wholeness that is itself embedded in a larger wholeness. This web of interconnectedness extends well beyond our individual psychological self. We are part of a larger whole, interconnected with our family, our society, and ultimately all of life on the planet. We depend on the ozone layer, the rainforests, and the oceans. One scientific view, the Gaia hypothesis, is that the Earth as a whole behaves as one single self-regulating living organism. This affirms a view held by all traditional cultures, that all life is interconnected and interdependent. The ability to perceive interconnectedness and wholeness can be cultivated through mindfulness practice. It comes from recognizing how quickly our mind jumps to habitual ways of seeing, shaped by our prejudices and beliefs. To illustrate the automatic nature of our thinking, we give a homework problem in the first MBSR class. Connect 9 dots with 4 straight lines without lifting your pencil. Most people get stuck because they see the 9 dots as a square and don't extend the lines beyond this imaginary boundary. The aha moment comes with the realization that the solution lies in going beyond the self-imposed limit. The problem of the 9 dots suggests that we may need to take a broader view of certain problems if we hope to solve them. This is called adopting a systems perspective. If we don't identify the system correctly in its entirety, the domain of the whole, we will never find a satisfactory solution. Our habitual ways of seeing can thwart our attempts to solve problems, leading to frustration and inadequacy. Our doubts about our own abilities can become self-fulfilling prophecies. But the fact is, in many situations, you really do not know what you are capable of. What you can do will very strongly depend on how you see things, on your beliefs about your own limits. In the stress reduction clinic, people often surprise themselves with their newfound courage and clarity, buoyed up by a new sense of wholeness and connectedness within themselves. Wholeness and connectedness are fundamental to our nature as living beings. No matter how many scars we carry, our original wholeness is still here. We can reconnect with it at any time because it is always present. It is who we truly are. The work of MBSR involves helping people to see, feel, and believe in their wholeness, to discover an underlying fabric of wholeness and connectedness within themselves. The body is an ideal place to begin. Our bodies usually require some healing, and if we listen carefully, they can teach us a great deal about what is most difficult for us to recognize and come to terms with. Mindfulness is a key ingredient in nurturing what is deepest and best, and forever unharmed within ourselves. The very word health itself means whole. Wholeness implies integration. and interconnectedness of all parts. The nature of wholeness is that it is always present. Coming to terms with things as they are is the process of healing. Every living organism is whole in itself and also embedded in a larger wholeness. Health is a dynamical process, not a fixed state. The notion of wholeness is also found in the words meditation and medicine. Both derive from a Latin root that means to cure, which in turn comes from an Indo-European root meaning to measure. This is not an external standard, but the Platonic notion of a thing's own right inward measure. Medicine restores this right inward measure when it is disturbed. Meditation is the process of perceiving it directly through careful, non-judgmental self-observation. Mindfulness meditation is a door into direct experiences of wholeness. It is a consciousness discipline based on a paradigm that is profoundly different from that of mainstream Western psychology. Many great minds have been preoccupied with this notion. Carl Jung held the meditative traditions of Asia in high regard for their methods of coming to wholeness. Albert Einstein also articulated the importance of seeing with eyes of wholeness. In a letter comforting a rabbi over the death of his child, Einstein wrote that a human being is a part of the whole, but experiences himself as something separated, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. Our task, he wrote, must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Einstein is reminding us that our experience of ourselves as separate is a delusion. When we neglect the perspective of holiness, we see only one side of being alive. The true value of a human being, he wrote, is determined by the measure in which he has attained liberation from the self. His remedy is to break out of this optical delusion by intentionally cultivating compassion. Coming back to the problem of the 9 dots, how we perceive a problem and ourselves can have a profound influence on what we are capable of. Seeing with eyes of wholeness means recognizing that nothing occurs in isolation. Seeing in this way is healing. It helps us to acknowledge the ways in which we are extraordinary and miraculous, without losing sight of the ways in which we are simultaneously nothing special, just part of a larger whole unfolding. Chapter 13 on healing. When we use the word healing in the context of MBSR, we mean a profound transformation of view, a rotation in consciousness. This transformation is catalyzed by an encounter with one's own wholeness. When we glimpse our own completeness in the stillness of a meditative practice, a new and profound coming to terms with our problems and suffering begins. We start to see ourselves and our problems differently from a perspective of wholeness. This perceptual shift away from fragmentation and toward interconnectedness creates an entirely new context for our problems. It moves us from a feeling of being helpless and pessimistic to a sense of the possible, a sense that the situation might just be workable. This transformation of view comes about in many different ways. Sometimes people have sudden, dramatic experiences during meditation that lead to new ways of seeing. More frequently, the transformations are incremental and subtle, moments of simply feeling deeply relaxed or confident. Dramatic or subtle, these shifts in perspective are signs of seeing with eyes of wholeness. Out of this shift comes an ability to act with greater balance and inner security, especially when encountering stress or pain. Phil, a 47-year-old truck driver with a back injury, had a breakthrough during his first week practicing the body scan. Lying on his back in a lot of pain, he stayed with the practice despite his doubts. After about 20 minutes, he started feeling his breathing all over his body and became completely focused on that extraordinary sensation. Then he realized he wasn't feeling any pain at all. He came to the second class ecstatic. The next week, however, was the opposite. His pain was just as bad as ever. I suggested that perhaps he was trying too hard, fighting with his pain to regain the good feelings of the first week. He went home determined to let whatever was going to happen, happen. After that, things went more smoothly. He discovered that as his concentration deepened, his pain would diminish by 40 to 50%. Joyce, a 50-year-old woman, came to the clinic after being treated for a cancerous tumor on her leg. Her husband and mother had both died on the same day 2 years earlier. During her first body scan, she had a powerful experience of some otherness, a feeling she described as a nothingness and an everything at the same time. This feeling, which she still remembered 10 years later, was what kept her going through very difficult times. She was convinced that her meditation practice was responsible for keeping her cancer in remission, a development her oncologist admitted was highly unusual. While some people have strong experiences right away, for others, something positive is usually stirring beneath the surface as a result of regular practice, even if it is not so dramatic. Healing is always a unique and deeply personal experience. The meditation practice, taken on in the spirit of self-exploration, can transform our capacity to face, embrace, and work with the full catastrophe of our lives. But to make this a reality, you must take responsibility for adapting the practice so that it becomes yours. Healing comes out of the practice when it is engaged in as a way of being, not as a way of getting somewhere. From this perspective, you already are whole. What is required is that we let go into the domain of being and reside in that wholeness with awareness. This is what is fundamentally healing. In the clinic, we are constantly astonished by the many ways our patients adapt the practice and by its unpredictable effects. Most people come hoping for peace of mind, but they often leave transformed beyond anything they had hoped for. The individual outcomes of mindfulness practice are not predictable, but they all grow directly out of the meditation itself. Part of making the practice your own is paying attention to the behaviors and habits that influence your health. Cultivating greater awareness in these areas can amplify the process of personal transformation that grows naturally out of dwelling in the domain of being. Healing, as we are using the word here, does not mean curing. There are few outright cures for chronic diseases or stress-related disorders, but it is possible for us to heal ourselves, to learn to live with and work with the conditions that present themselves in the present moment. Healing implies that we can relate differently to illness, disability, even death, as we learn to see with eyes of wholeness. In even brief moments of stillness, you may come to realize that you are already whole, even if your body has cancer or heart disease or AIDS. These experiences of wholeness often include a palpable sense of being larger than your illness. We are not meditating to make anything go away. The healing power of mindfulness lies in living each moment as fully as we can, accepting it as it is. Paradoxically, this shift in orientation has the power to transform everything. Acceptance is not passive resignation. It is taking a reading of a situation, embracing it in awareness, and recognizing that things are as they are. Then we can choose to be in a wiser relationship to the present moment. This non-doing is itself a powerful form of action. One woman with breast cancer had the insight that she was not her cancer. She was a whole person, and the cancer was a process going on within her body. This realization made her feel freer and set the stage for healing, for dissolving the mental boundaries that confined her. Her commitment was not to cure her cancer, but to live life as fully as possible, no matter what. There is mounting evidence from the field of psychoneuroimmunology that the mind can indeed influence the course of at least some diseases. Our thoughts, emotions, and life experiences can influence our susceptibility or resistance to disease. Studies have shown a connection between MBSR training and enhanced immune function. In one study, employees who underwent MBSR training showed a significantly higher antibody response to a flu vaccine than a control group. This response was correlated with a shift in brain activity toward greater emotional resilience. While we must be cautious in interpreting these findings, they suggest that the mind can play a significant role in healing. From our point of view, an individual who comes to MBSR with a strong expectation of strengthening their immune system might actually be creating an impediment to their own healing. If the essence of meditation is non-doing, then trying to get what you want can distort the very qualities of letting go and acceptance that are the foundation for healing. This is not to say that you cannot use meditation for specific ends. Visualizations and imagery are used in many meditative traditions, and they are always undertaken within the larger context of meditation as a way of being. In order to be maximally effective for healing, they must be embedded in a context that honors non-doing and non-striving. From our experience, symptom reduction and a transformation of perspective are more likely to occur if you actively cultivate non-doing rather than preoccupy yourself with what your blood pressure or immune system is doing. This inner peace and acceptance lie at the heart of both health and wisdom. Chapter 14: Doctors, Patients, and People, Moving Toward a Unified Perspective on Health and Illness. The past decade and a half have seen three extremely exciting major discoveries in basic science that are transforming our understanding of the body, the mind, and their influence on our health. The first is neuroplasticity, the phenomenon that the brain is an organ of ongoing experience. It continues to grow and reshape itself across our entire lifespan in response to experience. This discovery upended the long-standing dogma that we only lost neurons as we grew older. A new field, contemplative neuroscience, has arisen to investigate what can be learned about the mind-body connection by studying long-term meditators and those new to practices like MBSR. The second new area of emergence is the field of epigenetics. It turns out that the genome is also plastic. Our experiences, behaviors, and attitudes can potentially influence which genes in our chromosomes are turned on or off. This suggests that we are not entirely prisoners of our genetic inheritance. We can modulate its expression and potentially influence our susceptibility to diseases. The third recent revolution is the discovery of telomeres, the structures at the ends of our chromosomes necessary for cell division, and the enzyme telomerase that repairs them. Telomere length is directly related to cellular aging and how long we may live, and the rate at which they degrade is very much affected by how much stress we are under and how well we cope with it. Because of these breakthroughs, we find ourselves at a very promising juncture in the evolution of medicine. More is known about the structure and functioning of living organisms than ever before. We know a great deal about the genetic and molecular basis of many diseases and have an elaborate array of drugs for controlling them. Yet, while more is known than ever, far more still remains unknown. Modern medicine is nowhere near putting itself out of business. We often don't discover the very real limits of medicine until it is our own body that is in pain. When we come right down to it, there are few medical cures for the chronic diseases that are a major cause of suffering in our society. It is far better to prevent them in the first place. Most physicians acknowledge the role of the mind and social factors in healing, sometimes talked about as the will to live. Yet until recently, doctors received little training in how to help patients make use of their own inner resources for healing. Too often, the technological sophistication of the medical approach leads to an impersonal, even disembodied approach to the patient. A cardinal aphorism of traditional medicine has always been that the secret of the care of the patient is in caring for the patient. In an optimal encounter, both patient and physician have essential roles to play. When we become ill and take on the role of patient, we are in a particularly vulnerable psychological state. We may be unusually sensitive to the messages we get from our doctors, which can either augment the healing process or subvert it. A story told by renowned cardiologist Bernard Lown powerfully illustrates this. A patient of his, a middle-aged librarian with a heart condition, died of intractable heart failure after misinterpreting a medical acronym her doctor used. The thought that her situation was terminal, although completely untrue, set off an immediate and severe psychophysiological reaction from which she could not be extricated. Dr. Lown's story graphically illustrates the enormous power that strongly held beliefs, which are in actuality just thoughts, can have on our health. The pain and anxiety that patients experience at the hands of the healthcare system could often be avoided if physicians were better trained to value psychological and social observations. Mindfulness provides a yardstick for apprehending the effects of one's interactions with a patient. Nowadays, mindfulness in the physician-patient relationship is becoming more a part of good medical training. This movement has its roots in the seminal work of Dr. George Engel, who advocated for a biopsychosocial model that treats the patient as a whole person, taking into account the importance of psychological and social factors in health and disease. This dualistic way of thinking, which separates mind and body, so permeated Western culture that it closed off the entire realm of mind-body interactions as a legitimate domain of scientific inquiry. Only in the past several decades has this old perspective begun to change. This is due in part to the advent of contemplative neuroscience, which is demonstrating that training the mind through meditation can change the material brain. Other influences in this movement toward an expanded perspective include the placebo effect, the acceptance of acupuncture in the West, Dr. Herbert Benson's research on the relaxation response, and the pioneering work in biofeedback and self-regulation. The field of behavioral medicine offers new hope for people who tend to fall through the cracks of the healthcare system. Clinical programs like MBSR present people with the opportunity to do something for themselves as a complement to traditional medical approaches. By participating intimately in their own health and well-being, they can help to restore and optimize their health. When this book was first published, there was almost no science of mindfulness. Now there is an ever-increasing body of evidence suggesting that mindfulness-based interventions can affect specific regions in the brain, positively influence immune functions, and improve a wide range of health indicators. Examining this evidence can help us see that each one of us has an important role to play in our own well-being, a role that can be more effectively played if we become conscious of and modify the aspects of our lives that influence our health. Chapter 15, Mind and Body, Evidence that Beliefs, Attitudes, Thoughts, and Emotions can harm or heal. In the last chapter, we saw a dramatic example of how a single thought, triggered by a misunderstood remark, led to a woman's death. This illustrates the profound effect our thoughts can have on our health, for better or for worse. Another case in point is depressive rumination, negative thought patterns that can precipitate a downward spiral into depression. Our thought patterns dictate the ways we perceive and explain reality. They underlie our motives, influence our confidence, and are at the core of our beliefs. When we bring mindfulness to our thinking, we often find that a lot of our thoughts are inaccurate, at best only partially true. Dr. Martin Seligman, a founder of positive psychology, studied the health differences between people who are basically optimistic or pessimistic in their thinking. Pessimists tend to blame themselves for bad events and believe the negative effects will be permanent and pervasive. Optimists, on the other hand, tend to see bad events as momentary occurrences that can be resolved. Dr. Roth. Seligman's work suggests that a highly pessimistic attributional style puts people at a significantly higher risk for depression, physical symptoms, and premature death. An optimistic pattern of thinking, in contrast, appears to have a protective effect. Another powerful thought pattern is self-efficacy, a belief in your ability to exercise control over specific events. Studies by Dr. Albert Bandura showed that a strong sense of self-efficacy is the best predictor of positive health outcomes in many different medical situations. It increases when you succeed at something you feel is important. For example, if you practice the body scan and feel more in touch with your body, that taste of success will lead to greater confidence in your ability to relax. Self-efficacy can also increase when you are inspired by the examples of others. Further research has focused on people who seem to thrive on stress. Dr. Suzanne Kobasa identified a characteristic she called psychological hardiness, which involves a particular way of seeing oneself and the world. Stress-hardy individuals show high levels of three characteristics: control, commitment, and challenge. Dr. Aaron Antonovsky's research on survivors of extreme stress found that they have an inherent sense of coherence about the world and themselves, characterized by comprehensibility, manageability, and meaningfulness. In our own work at the Stress Reduction Clinic, we found that both stress hardiness and sense of coherence increased over the 8 weeks of the MBSR program, suggesting that the practice was having a profound effect on how our patients saw themselves and their relationship to the world. A parallel line of research has concerned itself with the role of emotions in health and illness. There has been an ongoing debate about whether certain personality types are more prone to certain diseases. Much of the evidence for a cancer-prone personality comes from a 40-year study by Dr. Caroline Bedell Thomas, which found that a lack of close relationship to parents and an ambivalent attitude toward life were associated with an increased likelihood of having cancer later in life. It is important to remember that these are statistical relationships, not one-to-one correspondences. It is wrong to conclude that certain personality traits directly cause disease, but there is mounting evidence that they may predispose a person to at least some forms of cancer. Researchers at the University of Glasgow found that men with lung cancer showed a particular difficulty in expressing their emotions. This inability to express feelings was strongly linked to mortality. Other research on women with breast cancer found that those who suppressed their feelings had a higher risk of cancer. In a 5-year follow-up, women who faced their situation with a fighting spirit were much more likely to be alive than those who adopted an attitude of stoic acceptance or felt helpless and defeated. While these studies are suggestive, it is important not to blame a person for their illness. This kind of thinking is far more likely to result in increased suffering than in greater healing. If a person who has cancer believes that stress or emotional factors may have been a factor, that is their prerogative to explore. The issue of causal psychological factors is of secondary importance once a person has been diagnosed. At that juncture, it becomes more important to take responsibility for what needs doing in the present. There are now a number of mindfulness-based approaches developed specifically for people with cancer, such as the Mindfulness-Based Cancer Recovery Program. There is also evidence that suppressing emotional expression, particularly anger, may play a role in hypertension. Perhaps the greatest scientific scrutiny of personality factors in relationship to chronic disease has focused on the question of a heart disease-prone personality, known as type A behavior. Further research, however, showed that it was not the entire type A pattern, but only the hostility component that was a stronger predictor of heart disease. A hostile and cynical outlook on the world may, in and of itself, put one at much greater risk for illness and premature death than a more trusting view of people does. Other research on prosocial emotions, emotional style, and motivation has further illuminated the connection between our inner world and our health. The evidence suggests that certain patterns of thinking and ways of relating to our feelings can predispose us to illness. Thoughts and beliefs that foster hopelessness, a sense of loss of control, hostility, and social isolation all appear to be particularly toxic. On the other hand, patterns associated with robust health include an optimistic perspective, a strong sense of coherence, a spirit of engagement, and valuing relationships. It makes more sense to think of health and illness as opposite poles of a continually changing continuum. There will always be a flux of different forces at work in our lives. The whole point of this book, and of MBSR, is that there is a lot that you can do to influence how things unfold across the lifespan. The relevance of the evidence presented here lies in our ability to bring awareness to our own thoughts and feelings and their consequences. If we can observe the toxicity of certain beliefs and emotional patterns as they arise, we can work to lessen their hold on us. This is how we can use this knowledge in our practice. We can work mindfully to consciously develop health-enhancing qualities like affiliative trust and compassion, which have intrinsic healing power. These become new and profoundly satisfying ways of seeing and being in the world. Chapter 16, Connectedness and Interconnectedness. Imagine a famous experiment carried out years ago by social psychologists Judith Rodin and Ellen Langer. They studied elderly residents in a nursing home, dividing them into two groups. One group was explicitly encouraged to make more decisions for themselves, such as when to see movies, while the other was encouraged to let the staff help them. Each person was also given a plant. The first group was told, "This plant is to brighten up your room. It is your plant now, and whether it lives or dies is your responsibility." The other group was told, "This plant is to brighten up your room a little, but don't worry, the housekeeper will take care of it." A year and a half later, the two groups differed dramatically in how many people had died. The group encouraged to let the staff help them died at the usual rate for that nursing home. But the people who were encouraged to make decisions for themselves and were told the plant was their responsibility died at about half the usual rate. Roden and Langer interpreted these findings to mean that enabling residents to take more control in their lives protected them from an earlier death. This is consistent with the work on psychological hardiness, which identified a sense of control as an important factor in resisting illness. But there is a complementary interpretation, one that emphasizes connectedness rather than control. Those who were told the plant was their responsibility were given an opportunity to feel needed, to bond with the plant, and to feel that the plant depended on them for its well-being. This encouragement to make decisions may have led to them feeling more connected to the nursing home, as if they belonged there more. When you feel connected to something, that connection immediately gives you a purpose for living. Relationship itself gives meaning to life. We have already seen that affiliation, meaning, and a sense of coherence are attributes of well-being, and that at its core, mindfulness is about relationality. Connectedness and interconnectedness, which emphasizes the intrinsic reciprocity of all relationships, may be what is most fundamental about the relationship of mind to physical and emotional health. Studies of social involvement show that the sheer number of relationships one has is a strong predictor of mortality, suggesting that our connections play powerful roles in our lives. Even negative or stressful connections may be better for our health than isolation, unless we know how to be happy alone, which few of us do. Many studies with animals also support the idea that connectedness is important for health. Stroking and petting appear to be health-enhancing for both people and animals. The profound importance of touch was documented by the anthropologist Ashley Montagu. Physical touch is one of humanity's most basic ways of connecting. But we have many other channels for touching besides the skin: our eyes, our ears, our noses, our tongues. When touching is perfunctory, the meaning changes from connectedness to disconnectedness. The degree to which a person's mind and body are connected reflects the awareness they bring to present moment experience. If you are not in touch with yourself, it is very unlikely that your connections with others will be satisfactory. We might speculate that the increased risk of cancer associated with a lack of closeness to parents during childhood has something to do with the extreme importance of early experiences of connectedness to later health. It is in childhood that positive attitudes, beliefs, and basic human trust take root. Everybody's original experiences of life were literally and biologically experiences of connectedness and oneness. Each of us came into the world through the body of another being, and we all bear the sign of that connectedness in our belly button. As we grow older and learn about our separateness, we still need to feel connected in order to be psychologically healthy. The energy that feeds this ongoing connectedness is love. But love needs nurturing to flower fully. The path to developing our capacity to express love more fully is to bring awareness to our actual feelings, to observe them mindfully. More recent studies of newborn babies have dispelled the old viewpoint that they are insensitive to pain and unaware of the outside world at birth. Babies are alert and aware even in the womb. The work of John Bowlby and others on attachment research emphasizes the quality of the parent-child relationship and its effects on the child's development. Secure attachment leads to a robust sense of well-being. Early childhood experiences of isolation and abuse, the exact opposite of secure attachment, can lead to severe emotional disabilities and a signature of post-traumatic stress disorder. A lack of closeness with your parents can leave a deep, healable wound. What would it take to initiate the healing of such wounds? First, an acknowledgement that they are here. Second, a systematic way of listening to and reestablishing a sense of connectedness with your own body. We see such wounds every day in the stress reduction clinic. Many people feel disconnected from their bodies and devoid of any sense of personal or interpersonal coherence. They carry the scars of subtle psychological violence from childhood, missed connections that have formed imprisoning schemas. Until these wounds are healed, our efforts are not likely to result in wholeness or health. A general self-regulatory model proposed by Gary Schwartz attributed the ultimate origin of disease to disconnectedness and the maintenance of health to connectedness. This model was based on a systems perspective, which considers complex systems as wholes rather than reducing them to their component parts. Living systems maintain inner balance through their capacity to self-regulate via feedback loops. Dr. Schwartz used the term dysregulation to describe what happens when this system becomes imbalanced due to a disruption of essential feedback loops. One major cause of disconnection is disattention, not attending to the relevant feedback messages of our body and our mind. Conversely, attention leads to connection, connection to regulation, regulation to order, and order to health. So what does relevant feedback mean? When our body is in a relatively healthy state, it takes care of itself. But some vital functions do reach our consciousness and can be attended to with awareness, such as our basic drives. The feeling of hunger is feedback. The feeling of fullness is feedback. This is an example of self-regulation. If you eat for reasons other than hunger, overriding these feedback messages, the simple process can become highly dysregulated and lead to disease. When we seek help from doctors, they become part of our feedback system. They prescribe treatments to reconnect the feedback loops so the organism can self-regulate once again. Even when we are healthy, the more we intentionally tune into and establish sensitive connections with our body, our mind, and the world, the more likely we will be to move the system as a whole to even greater levels of balance and stability. This is where mindfulness comes into the picture, as the intentional cultivation of attention. When we work systematically to bring our undivided attention into the body, we increase our connectedness with it. We inhabit it more fully, we befriend it. The same is true for our thoughts and emotions. The more conscious we are of the interconnectedness of our thoughts, emotions, and actions, the more effective we will be when faced with challenges. If we wish to mobilize our most powerful inner resources, we will have to learn how to tap into them in the face of the stress we are immersed in. In the following section, we will examine what we mean by stress and how we might make use of it to heal and to come to peace within ourselves. Chapter 17. The popular name for the full catastrophe nowadays is stress. It is a complex term that unifies a vast array of human responses into a single concept. Stress occurs on multiple levels: physiological, psychological, and social, and originates from many sources. To understand and work with it effectively, it helps to think about it from a systems perspective. Dr. Hans Selye first popularized the term in the 1950s, defining stress as a response and coining the word stressor to describe the stimulus that produced it. He defined stress as the non-specific response of the organism to any pressure or demand. The picture is complicated by the fact that a stressor can be internal, like a thought or feeling, as well as external. The genius of Selye's insight was in emphasizing the non-specificity of the stress response, which he called the general adaptation syndrome. He saw it as a pathway by which organisms maintain fitness in the face of threat and change. He also saw that under certain circumstances, our very attempts to respond to pressure, if inadequate or dysregulated, could in themselves lead to breakdown and disease. It turns out we have a great deal of choice in the matter. As Dr. Seligman's studies showed, it is not the potential stressor itself, but how you perceive and handle it that determines whether it will lead to stress. Our ability to cope depends on how virulent the stressors are. At one end of the spectrum are stressors that will destroy life, regardless of our perception, like exposure to high levels of radiation. At the other end are forces that almost nobody finds stressful, like the continuous pull of gravity. In the vast middle range, the general rule is that how you see things and how you handle them makes all the difference. You have the power to affect the balance point between your internal resources and the stressors that are an unavoidable part of living. Much of the early research on the physiological effects of stress did not distinguish between a psychological and a physiological component. Later efforts demonstrated that psychological factors are an important part of the response to physical stressors. Sense of control, in particular, is a key factor in protecting an animal from stress-induced disease, and the same relationship holds for humans. Since we have many more psychological options than animals, By becoming conscious of these options, we can exert considerable influence over our experience of stress and whether it leads to disease. The late Richard Lazarus and his colleague Susan Folkman proposed that stress should be considered as a transaction between a person and their environment. Lazarus defined psychological stress as a particular relationship between the person and the environment that is appraised by the person as taxing or exceeding his or her resources and endangering his or her well-being. This insightful approach emphasized the critical role of appraisal and conscious choice. It implied that the meaning we bring to a situation, our perspective as a whole, can determine whether it is labeled as stressful or not. This is very good news, because given any situation, there are usually many ways of seeing it and many potential ways of handling it. We can build up our bank account of inner resources in advance so that we are better prepared to handle intensely stressful experiences. The transactional view of psychological stress reminds us that we can be more resilient if we build up our resources. These resources are a combination of inner and outer supports. Outer supports include loving family relationships and friendships. Inner resources include self-efficacy, stress hardiness, a sense of coherence, and affiliative trust. All of these can be strengthened by practicing mindfulness. Stress-hardy individuals are more resilient because they view life as a challenge, have a strong commitment to experiencing its fullness, and assume an active role in interfacing with what they are facing. People with a high sense of coherence have strong internal convictions about the comprehensibility, manageability, and meaningfulness of life experiences. If, on the other hand, our reactions are clouded by fear, hopelessness, or anger, our actions will likely create additional problems, digging us deeper into a hole. Lazarus's definition implies that for something to be psychologically stressful, it must be appraised as a threat. Yet we are often unaware of the degree to which our relationships with our inner and outer environment are taxing our resources. Precisely because perception and appraisal play such a major role, the main avenue available for handling stress effectively is to understand what we are going through by cultivating our ability to perceive our experience in its full context. This allows us to see our life situation more clearly and influence how much we get caught up in habitual reactions. If we can change the way we see, we can change the way we respond, and thereby dramatically lower our stress and its consequences for our health and well-being. Chapter 18, Change, the one thing you can be sure of. The concept of stress suggests that we are continually faced with the necessity of adapting to change. If we can learn to see change as an integral part of life and not as a threat, we will be in a much better position to cope effectively with stress. The meditation practice itself brings us face to face with the undeniable experience of continual change within our own minds and bodies. We live immersed in a sea of change. Even inanimate material is subject to continual change. Continents, mountains, and stars all change over time. Nothing is absolutely stable. To be alive means to be in a continual state of flux. We emerge as discrete individuals from a stream of preceding beings, and at some point, our life as a discrete individual comes to an end. Unlike most living things, we are able to think about the changes we experience, wonder about them, and even fear them. Our bodies are constantly changing. A human life begins as a single cell, and through a process of division and differentiation, develops into a seamless whole of more than 10 trillion cells. Even in the body's earliest stages, death is part of the process, as cells die selectively to form the spaces between our fingers and toes. By the time we are born, we are ready for the ongoing transformations of infancy, adolescence, and adulthood. Growth and learning need not stop at young adulthood. We can continue to cultivate and develop ourselves at every level of the body, mind, and heart. At the other end of this process, our bodies grow old and die. Life is constant change from the word go. Living organisms have developed impressive ways of protecting themselves from unpredictable fluctuations in the environment. The concept of inner biochemical stability, called homeostasis or allostasis, was first articulated in the 19th century. These finely tuned regulatory mechanisms, controlled by the brain and nervous system, preserve the dynamic internal balance of the organism. We have also evolved drives and instincts, like thirst and hunger, that direct our behavior to satisfy our body's needs. So while constant change is the hallmark of the outside world, our bodies are biologically protected and buffered. We have built-in repair mechanisms that allow biological mistakes to be recognized and corrected. This biological resilience is a major ally when it comes to facing stress and change in our lives. As Hans Selye emphasized, a stress-free life is impossible. The very process of being alive means there will be wear and tear. The modern terminology for this is allostatic load. The body's beneficial short-term response to stress can itself become damaging in the longer term. Responding to stress with greater mindfulness instead of reacting habitually can dramatically reduce its negative effects. In the 1960s, researchers began to investigate the relationship between how much change a person goes through and their later health. They ordered a number of life events in terms of the degree of adjustment they would require, from the death of a spouse to getting a traffic ticket, and found that a high score on their life change index was associated with a higher probability of illness. Many of these life changes, like getting married or promoted, are usually considered happy occasions. They are included because even positive events are profound life changes that require adaptation and are therefore stressful. Selye called this eustress, or good stress. Whether it leads to distress or bad stress depends in large measure on how you adapt to it. The meaning that life changes have for you will strongly depend on their total context. The Holmes and Rahe life events scale, while an important contribution, had major weaknesses. It left out the dimension of trauma and the consequences of highly traumatic events, especially those that occur early in life. The ultimate effect on our health of the stress we experience depends in large measure on how we perceive change itself and how skillful we are in adapting to it, while maintaining our own inner balance and sense of coherence. This, in turn, depends on the meaning we attribute to events and on how much awareness we can bring to our frequently mindless and automatic reactions. It is here, in our mind-body reactions to the occurrences in our lives that we find stressful, that mindfulness most needs to be applied, and where its power to transform the quality of our lives can best be put to work. Chapter 19. Stuck in stress reactivity. We human beings are remarkably resilient creatures. We manage to persevere, to survive, and even to find moments of pleasure and fulfillment in the face of the full catastrophe. We are expert copers, buoyed by our creativity, our religious beliefs, our tenacious love for life, and the support we receive from our community. Underlying our conscious engagement with life's challenges is an unconscious biological intelligence, honed over millions of years of evolution, that is nothing short of awe-inspiring. This system functions at the level of perception, motor responses, and allostatic mechanisms, and it can operate with extreme rapidity. When this system is functioning adaptively, our automatic reactions can be life-saving. There is nothing wrong with this kind of automaticity. These reactions are biologically trustworthy. At the same time, our innate psychophysiological balance can be pushed over the edge into dysregulation and disorder if it is driven beyond its capacity to respond in healthy ways. Our habitual and automatic reactions to the stressors we encounter, particularly when we react maladaptively, determine in large measure how much stress we experience. Automatic reactions triggered out of unawareness, especially when the circumstances are not life-threatening but we take them that way, can compound stress, making simple problems worse. They can prevent us from seeing clearly, from solving problems creatively, and from understanding what is going on within ourselves. Ultimately, they close down our ability to experience peace of mind. A lifetime of unconscious and unexamined habitual reactivity is likely to increase our risk of eventual breakdown and illness. Consider yourself as the person in the center of the stress reaction cycle. External events, potential stressors from the physical, social, or political environment, impinge on us and are rapidly appraised for the threat they pose. At the same time, our own mind and body generate their own set of pressures or internal stressors. Our thoughts and feelings can act as major stressors, even if they have no correspondence with reality. Some stressors are chronic, affecting us over extended periods, while others are acute, coming and going over relatively short periods. When you are stressed to the extent that your mind identifies a threat to your being, you will usually react with some kind of automatic alarm reaction. This is our body's way of clearing the decks for defensive or aggressive action. Walter B. Cannon termed this the fight or flight response. We are subject to the same physiological reactions that other animals exhibit. When we feel threatened, whether the threat is physical or a more abstract threat to our social well-being, the fight or flight reaction occurs almost instantly. It involves a rapid cascade of brain and nervous system firings and the release of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. This results in a state of hyperarousal. Our senses are heightened, our heart rate increases, and blood is rerouted from the digestive system to the large muscles of the arms and legs. Many of these rapid changes come about through the activation of the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. The parasympathetic branch, in contrast, acts as a brake, slowing things down. The entire system is regulated by the hypothalamus, which in turn is influenced by the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. The deep connectedness of these brain regions allows for an integrated experience of living and for the possibility of regulating our emotional reactivity on the basis of a deeper understanding. This quality of well-being, sometimes called eudaimonia, can be cultivated through practice. The fight-or-flight reaction, a highly evolved, intelligent capacity, has been vital for our survival as a species. What is problematic is when we can't control it, when we use its energies in situations where there is no immediate threat, but we act as if there were. Most of the time, we are not running from mountain lions, but we are still prone to go into fight-or-flight mode when we feel threatened or thwarted in our goals. Our minds perceive mortal threats even when there are none. When this happens, our fight-or-flight pathways can become chronically activated, changing our biology and our psychology. We become primed for all the problems associated with chronic hyperarousal, right down to the level of which genes get turned on and off. Chronic arousal also accelerates the aging process at the cellular level. People have many more choices than animals in situations of social stress, but we often get stuck in the same patterns of dominance and submission. Much of our stress comes from threats, real or imagined, to our social status. By causing us to react so quickly and automatically, the fight-or-flight reaction often creates more problems than it solves. Unfortunately, hyperarousal can become a permanent way of life. Many of our patients in the MBSR program describe themselves as tense and anxious all the time, suffering from chronic muscle tension. These are common responses to everyday stressful situations. Since the capacity to trigger a fight-or-flight reaction is part of our nature, it is essential for us to be aware of this inner tendency and how easily it can be triggered. Awareness is the critical element in learning how to free yourself from your stress reactions. One common way we deal with these reactions in social situations is to suppress them. We internalize the arousal, which can be toxic, especially if it becomes a default mode. When you internalize the stress reaction, you don't get the resolution and recovery that fighting or running brings. High stress and strong amygdala activation shut down the activity in the prefrontal cortex, crashing our executive functions. We encounter many situations that tax our resources. If our automatic response is always a mini fight-or-flight reaction and we inhibit its expression, we will drift into a perpetual state of chronic hyperarousal. This is called allostatic overload, and it can lead to a host of physical and psychological problems. We see the results of this way of living every day in the clinic. People come to us when they have had enough. But many people cope with stress in ways that are actually self-destructive. Maladaptive coping, such as denial, may provide a sense of control in the short run, but it compounds the stress in the long run. Other unhealthy ways of avoiding our real problems include workaholism and filling up our time with busyness. We also love to look outside ourselves for quick fixes, using chemicals like alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, sugar, and prescription drugs to change our body-mind state. Food can also be used to cope with emotional discomfort, becoming a powerful addiction. Many of the ways people use chemicals are potential examples of maladaptive coping. they can become impediments to adapting effectively to the stressors we live with. They undermine our motivation to find healthier ways to live. Sooner or later, the accumulated effects of stress reactivity, compounded by inadequate and toxic ways of dealing with it, lead to breakdown. What gives out first will depend on our genes, our environment, and our way of living. If the breakdown does not result in death, it becomes one more major stressor. In some cases of long-term unavoidable stress, such as caring for a disabled child, continued arousal can lead to feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, and chronic depression can set in. Breakdown does not have to be primarily physical. It can also be a depletion of our emotional and cognitive resources, what is sometimes called a nervous breakdown or burnout. This vicious cycle of stress and maladaptive coping is a way of life for many, but getting stuck in the stress reaction cycle is neither normal nor inevitable. The healthy alternative is to stop reacting to stress and to start responding to it. This is the path of mindfulness in daily life. Chapter 20: Responding to Stress Instead of Reacting. The first and most important step in breaking free from a lifetime of stress reactivity is to be aware of what is actually happening while it is happening. At any moment, we may encounter a combination of internal and external stressors that can trigger a habitual or automatic stress reaction. But there is an alternative pathway, the mindfulness-mediated stress response. This is the healthy alternative, representing adaptive coping strategies as opposed to maladaptive ones. With training, practice, and intentionality, you can experiment with choosing not to go the route of the fight-or-flight reaction or of helplessness and overwhelm. Stress reactions, by definition, happen automatically and unconsciously. But as soon as you intentionally bring awareness to a stressful situation, you have already changed it dramatically. You have opened up a field of potentially adaptive and creative possibilities simply by not being on automatic pilot. This interior shift to embrace what is unfolding in awareness can be extremely important, giving you a range of options for influencing what will happen next. Bringing awareness to such a moment takes only a split second, but it is the deciding factor in whether you go down the path of the stress reaction or navigate over to the path of the stress response. If you manage to remain centered in a moment of stress and recognize your impulses to react, you have introduced a new dimension into the situation. You neither have to react automatically nor suppress your thoughts and feelings. You can allow yourself to feel threatened, fearful, or angry, and to feel the tension in your body. In the present, you can easily recognize these agitations for what they are: thoughts, emotions, and sensations. This simple momentary shift from mindless reaction to mindful recognition can reduce the power of the stress reaction and its hold over you. You now have a very real choice. You can respond instead of reacting. This inner response would be a lot to ask of ourselves if we expected awareness and centeredness to just come out of nowhere. But through formal meditation practices, we have been training our mind and body to respond in this way all along. The capacity to respond mindfully develops each time we experience discomfort or strong emotions during formal meditation, and just observe them without reacting. The practice itself grounds us in alternative ways of seeing and responding to reactive states within ourselves. It offers a new way of being, one that allows us to feel more in touch with what is unfolding moment by moment, expanding our sense of being anchored and stable. From this comes a wise relationality and more appropriate and effective responsivity. One thing is certain: we know where the fight-or-flight reaction will lead if left to play itself out automatically. The challenge now is to realize that, in any moment, we can intentionally shift how we are in relationship to our experience. Choosing the route of the stress response does not mean you will never react automatically. It means that more of the time you might be more aware of those feelings and impulses as they are arising. In general, awareness either reduces arousal by situating things in a larger perspective or helps you to recover from it more quickly. As you bring mindfulness to a stressful moment, you can create a pause, a moment in which it feels like you have a bit of extra time to assess things more completely. This allows you to buffer the impending effects of a major stress reaction by recognizing its early warning signs and holding them with kindness and awareness. This pause, even if it lasts only a fraction of a second, can seem expanded, even timeless, and your choices more vivid and available. Responding in this way under pressure is an empowering experience. What we think are our failures are not failures. They are gifts, revealing useful information if we are open to being mindful of everything that unfolds. How do we consciously cultivate the mindfulness-mediated stress response in daily life? The same way we cultivate mindfulness in the formal practices, moment by moment, grounding ourselves in our body, in our breathing, in awareness itself. When your buttons are pushed or you feel overwhelmed, bring your awareness to your jaw as it clenches, to your brow as it furrows, to your heart as it pounds. See if you can be aware of your feelings of anger or fear as they rise inside you. In such moments, you might say to yourself, "This is it," or "Here is a stressful situation." Mindfulness sets the stage for you to respond appropriately in this very moment. It takes practice to catch stress reactions as they are emerging, but every situation becomes another opportunity to practice responding mindfully instead of reacting habitually. The best place to start is with your breathing. The breath readily reconnects us with calmness and awareness. Resting in an awareness of breathing, even for a moment, can remind you to check in with your thoughts and feelings. Maintaining a modicum of stability and groundedness in the face of a stressor allows you to have an awareness of the fuller context of the situation. Your impulses will be seen within this larger picture. This allows you to remain calmer from the start or to recover your inner balance more quickly. When you are stabilized and grounded in calmness and moment-to-moment awareness, you are more likely to be creative and to see new options and openings. You are more likely to be aware of your emotions and less likely to be carried away by them. The mindfulness-mediated stress response doesn't generate more stress. You respond, and then it's finished. Having an alternative way of handling pressure can reduce our dependence on common maladaptive coping strategies. As relaxation and peace of mind become more familiar through formal practice, it becomes easier to call upon them when you need them. Each week, people in the clinic come to class with anecdotes of handling stress differently than before. These stories, from successfully controlling back pain during exams to remaining calm during a car accident, illustrate the power of this practice. Greater resilience in the face of stressors and reduced stress reactivity are characteristic of people who practice meditation regularly. Studies have shown that meditators not only have a heightened sensitivity to stressful events, but also recover their physical and mental equilibrium more quickly. Responding to stress requires moment-to-moment awareness. You will be charting new territory every time. You will have the freedom to be creative. When you cultivate mindfulness in your life, your ability to be fully present can come through even under the most trying of circumstances. It can cradle and embrace the full catastrophe itself. This is the comfort of wisdom and inner trust, the comfort of being whole. Chapter 21, Working with Symptoms, Listening to Your Body. The relief of symptoms is a multi-billion-dollar industry. The slightest sniffle or headache sends people scurrying for a magic something to make it go away. But the trouble with the widespread use of such drugs is that the underlying problems producing the symptoms may not be getting addressed. This practice reflects an attitude that symptoms are inconvenient, useless threats to be suppressed. The problem is that what we call symptoms are often the body's way of telling us that something is out of balance. They are feedback about dysregulation. If we ignore or suppress these messages, it may only lead to more serious problems later on. Over the past 3 decades of teaching MBSR, we have observed a dramatic reduction in the number of symptoms reported by participants. People come into the program with a relatively high number of symptoms and leave checking off, on average, 36% fewer. This effect is reproducible and maintained, even improving further after people leave the program. This suggests it is not a non-specific effect of receiving professional attention. Most participants have been receiving medical attention for their problems for years. Rather, it seems that being challenged to do something for themselves, a radical departure from the passive role they are used to, is a contributing factor. Although we see dramatic symptom reduction, we actually focus very little on symptoms in the classes. Our focus is on what is right with people rather than what is wrong with them, allowing them to taste their own wholeness as they are right now. Instead of discussing symptoms as woes to be gotten rid of, we focus on tuning into the actual experience of the symptoms themselves. This is what we call giving them wise attention. It involves bringing the stability and clarity of mindfulness to our symptoms and our reactions to them, distinguishing it from the usual self-centered, fearful attention we pay to our problems. The way of mindfulness is to accept ourselves right now, as we are. Instead of rejecting our experience as undesirable, we ask, what is this symptom telling me about my body and my mind right now? We allow ourselves to go right into the full-blown feeling of the symptom. As we experiment with this unusual stance, we may also become aware of the emotions we are feeling about the symptom. We hold whatever arises in awareness as dispassionately as possible, for no other reason than that it is here now. To move to greater levels of health, we have to start from where we actually are. In this light, symptoms of illness or distress can be viewed as messengers coming to give you important information. Killing the messenger or denying the message are not intelligent ways of approaching healing. Our real challenge is to listen to their messages and take them to heart. When a patient reports having a headache during meditation, my response is, "Now, can you tell us how you worked with it?" I'm looking for whether they used the occasion to look into the experience with wise attention, or if the mind automatically jumped to rejection and judging. The challenge is to shift your attention so that you can see your reactions as thoughts and welcome the headache into the present moment, because it is here anyway. When you look into the headache, you may realize that you are not your headache, unless you go along with the inner process of identification. The ways we use language reveal the automatic way we personalize our symptoms. We say, "I have a headache," when it might be more accurate to say, "The body is headaching." By seeing the symptom as a process, we acknowledge that it is dynamic and not static, an unfolding process that we are experiencing. When you look into a symptom with the full power of mindfulness, it gives you a much greater chance to honor your body and listen to its messages. When we fail to honor these messages, we can create serious dilemmas for ourselves. A priest in one of our classes realized that his body had been trying for years to get him to slow down his high-stress lifestyle, first with headaches, then an ulcer, and finally a mild heart attack. He felt grateful for the heart attack, seeing it as a gift, a final chance to start taking his body seriously. Chapter 22, Working with Physical Pain. Your pain is not you. The next time you hit your thumb with a hammer, perform a little experiment in mindfulness. Observe the explosion of sensations and reactions. If you are quick enough to bring mindfulness to the sensations, you may notice that you stop swearing and your movements become less violent. As you observe the flow of stinging, throbbing, and aching, you may notice, if your concentration is strong, a center of calmness within yourself. It can feel as if you are completely detached from the sensations, as if it were not your pain but just pain, or even just intense sensation. This is acute pain, which comes on suddenly and lasts a relatively short while. How you relate to the sensations you experience makes a big difference in the degree of pain you actually feel. Chronic pain is a much more intractable problem. It persists over time and is not easily relieved. Medicine manages acute pain far better than chronic pain. When pain lasts more than 6 months, it is said to have become chronic. In the rest of this chapter, we will discuss chronic pain and how you can use mindfulness to befriend it and explore options for being in a wiser relationship with it. It is important to note that all patients referred to the stress reduction clinic have had a full medical workup. MBSR is designed to be a vital complement to medical treatment, not a substitute for it. Pain per se is not a bad thing. It is one of your body's most important messengers, a healthy alarm reaction that tells you something is the matter. But as a society, we have an aversion to pain, which is really a misplaced aversion to suffering. Pain is a natural part of life. Suffering is one of many possible responses to it. It involves our thoughts and emotions and how they frame our experience. It is not always the pain per se, but the way we see it and react to it that determines the degree of suffering we will experience. Of course, nobody wants to live with chronic pain. It is widespread, and its costs both to society and to individuals are staggering. A lingering pain condition can be totally disabling, eroding the quality of your life. Treatments are often only partially successful, and many people are ultimately told they have to learn to live with their pain. But they are not often taught how. This should be the beginning, not the end of the road, and this is one of the most important roles that an MBSR program can play. In the new paradigm, pain is not just a body problem, but a whole system problem. The system's perspective on pain opens the door for many different ways to use your mind intentionally to influence your experience of it. Recent laboratory studies have corroborated this perspective, showing that meditative practices can have dramatic effects on pain reports. Long-term meditators show a significant reduction in the unpleasantness of painful stimuli, not because the intensity is less, but because they are able to reduce fearful anticipatory thinking by staying in the present moment. These findings underscore that there are different dimensions to the experience of pain: the sensory, the emotional, and the cognitive. When we can differentiate between these components, as we learn to do in MBSR, we can significantly reduce the experience of suffering. Our early studies of people with chronic pain conditions in the stress reduction clinic showed a dramatic and reproducible reduction in the average level of pain during the 8 weeks of the program. The majority of participants experienced clinically significant reductions in their pain levels. In addition to pain, we found that they perceived their bodies as approximately 30% less problematic, and showed a 30% improvement in the degree to which pain interfered with their daily activities. These improvements were accompanied by a sharp drop in negative mood states and major improvements in anxiety and depression. Even more encouraging, these improvements lasted. In a follow-up study, we found that on average, most of the gains were either maintained or improved still further up to 4 years later. The meditation training had lasting effects. Another study compared a group of pain patients who received MBSR training in addition to standard medical protocols with a group that received only the medical treatments. The meditators showed major improvements in pain, negative body image, mood, and psychological distress, while the non-meditators showed little change. This finding underscores the potential power of a more participatory medicine, in which patients are full collaborators in their own healing. One of the most interesting discoveries we made is that patients with very different kinds of pain problems all show similar improvements. This suggests that the MBSR curriculum, which involves a willingness to turn toward and open to the moment-to-moment experience of pain with self-compassion, might positively affect many different kinds of pain conditions. Some people have difficulty understanding why we emphasize entering into their pain when they simply hate it and want it to go away. One reason is that ignoring it doesn't always work. Laboratory experiments have shown that tuning into sensations is a more effective way of reducing the level of pain experienced when it is intense and prolonged than is distracting yourself. Bringing mindfulness to your pain can lead to new levels of insight and understanding that distraction or escape can never do. The sensory, emotional, and cognitive dimensions of the pain experience can be uncoupled from one another, giving us new degrees of freedom and dramatically reducing the suffering. If you have a chronic pain condition, it is best to start with the body scan. Remind yourself on a regular basis that you are a whole person who happens to have a chronic pain condition. Reframing your view of yourself in this way is especially important if you feel overwhelmed and defeated. In the body scan, the invitation is to inhabit each region of your body with full awareness, putting out the welcome mat for whatever arises in the way of sensations. Even if painful sensations change or become more intense, just note the qualities of that change. It is not helpful to expect pain to disappear. Anything you observe about your pain or your thoughts and emotions is to be noted non-judgmentally. It is important not to be overly thrilled with success or disappointed by lack of progress. Growth and healing take time. When you encounter moments when the pain is so intense that it is impossible to direct your attention elsewhere, let go of the body scan and bring your attention to focus directly on the pain itself. You are trying to find out about your pain, to become intimate with it, not to stop it or get rid of it. We use the expression putting out the welcome mat to describe this work. We try to relate to our experience of discomfort in as neutral a way as possible, opening up to the raw sensations themselves. As you do this, you can also bring awareness to the thoughts and feelings you're having about the sensations. It is good to notice that none of them is the pain itself. They are not you either. They are just the understandable reactions of a mind that wants things to be different. It may also strike you that the awareness of sensations, thoughts, and emotions is different from the sensations, thoughts, and emotions themselves. The awareness is not in pain. If you are not your body, then you cannot possibly be your body's pain. Your essential nature has to be bigger than the pain. As you learn to take up residency in the domain of being, your relationship to pain can undergo profound, transformative, and healing changes. It is hard work, but the breakthroughs will come in their own good time if you put in the energy in the spirit of self-discovery. Chapter 23, more on working with pain. Living with a chronic pain condition changes your whole life. Many people with back injuries are unable to work, especially in jobs that require lifting or standing. The frustration and depression of being in pain, unable to do what one once could, can make everybody in a person's life feel angry, defeated, and helpless. Low back pain can be debilitating. The constant threat of a wrong move triggering intense pain affects one's ability to lead a normal life. People with chronic back pain tend to have good days and bad days, and the uncertainty of it all can be very discouraging. A back problem almost forces you to be mindful, because the result of being unaware can be so debilitating. The people in the stress reduction clinic who are most successful in learning to live with their pain cultivate a long-term perspective on rehabilitating themselves. Big improvements may not come in 8 weeks. The quality of your life, however, can begin to improve from the very first time you practice the body scan. It might help to think of yourself as being in long-term training, like an athlete. Your project is rehabilitating yourself, and your starting point is befriending your body as it is. The deep meaning of the word rehabilitation comes from the French verb habiter, to dwell or to inhabit. It means to learn to live inside again. A long-term approach might include mindfully working to strengthen your back with prescribed physical therapy exercises or with yoga. It is important not to let your back problem become an excuse for not taking care of the rest of your body. On top of this, we suggest you practice the body scan daily as the core of your rehabilitation strategy. Use it as a time to rebody yourself, getting in touch with your body from moment to moment, befriending whatever discomfort or pain you may encounter with kindness and gentleness. This may be the best strategy for having things grow and deepen over time in the direction of true healing and true rehabilitation. One of the most healing things you can do for your body is to use your breath periodically to bathe and embrace the region of pain. It is important to take a moment-by-moment perspective, letting go of any expectations that the pain should lessen. Instead, just watch the breath do its work, bringing as much kindness and compassion as possible to your situation. Healing is a journey with ups and downs. If you are cultivating mindfulness and seeking ongoing advice, you will be able to catch things as they change and be flexible enough to accommodate your changing situation. The most important thing is to believe in your own ability to persevere and to not lose sight of your intrinsic wholeness. Bringing mindfulness to your daily activities is particularly valuable when you have a back condition. Doing things on automatic pilot can lead to serious setbacks. It helps to couple all your movements with awareness of your breathing and your body position. There will be times when you can't do any work, but there may be other times when it is possible to do things in moderation, seeing them as part of your program to build up your strength and flexibility. Take vacuuming, for instance. With a little attention and imagination, you can make the movements of vacuuming into a kind of mindful yoga. You work at the edges of what is possible, listening to your body. In the stress reduction clinic, we suggest that people with back pain take a cautious, experimental approach toward reclaiming their lives. Just because you have pain doesn't mean you should give up on your body. Experiment mindfully. Find out what works for you. Don't automatically deprive yourself of the normal activities that make life meaningful. Recall Phil, the French-Canadian truck driver, whose experience with the body scan in the first few weeks led to a dramatic and enduring reduction in his pain. He learned to modulate his back pain and felt more in control in other areas of his life as well. Before he started meditating, Phil had been wearing a TENS unit daily. After a few weeks of practice, he found he could go 2 or 3 days without it. It was a sign of his own power. The yoga practice was a crossroads for him. He almost gave up, but he did what he could and found he was becoming more flexible. He also noticed that things were different at home. His relationship with his wife had improved 100%, and with the kids too. On the subject of trying new things, Phil observed that he was now able to talk in public, something he could never do before because he was shy. What he said, he felt, came from inside, from the heart. It is no accident that meditation practice has something to teach us about coping with pain. Intensive training in meditation, traditionally the province of monasteries, can be a laboratory for exploring pain and learning how to come to terms with it. You learn that pain is not a static experience, it is constantly changing. You come to see that the sensations are just what they are, and that your thoughts and feelings are something apart from them. The qualities of this type of pain strongly resemble the sensations of many chronic pain conditions. Like meditators, endurance athletes also know the power of the mind in working with pain. They know from first-hand experience that pain can be worked with and transcended. In 1984, I had an opportunity to work with the United States Olympic men's rowing team, training them in the same meditation practices we use in MBSR. These world-class athletes were able to use mindfulness strategies to improve their ability to face and cope with pain during training and competition. Readers with chronic low back problems might be interested to know that John Bigelow, the single sculler on the 1984 U.S. Olympic rowing team, achieved his position in spite of a chronic back problem. He was able to rehabilitate himself by training very carefully, using the knowledge of his own limits. Imagine the faith, determination, and mindfulness necessary to even set out to work towards such a goal. But the goal was meaningful enough to sustain him. We may not be capable of such athletic feats, but each of us has the same capacity to heed our own interior messages and work with them in ways that further our overall goals. We are all athletes of the possible. Most headaches are not signs of serious pathological conditions, but it is always important to have a full diagnostic workup to rule them out. The majority of people with chronic headaches respond well to the meditation practice. You only need one experience of a chronic headache disappearing to know that it is possible. It can completely change the way you think about your body and your illness. One elderly woman with migraines found that putting out the welcome mat for her headache, talking to it, worked quite well. As your practice deepens, you may notice that your headaches do not come out of nowhere. Mindfulness practice can generate new insights into the identifiable preconditions that trigger their onset. For some people, chronic headaches may be a metaphor for everything that is disconnected and dysregulated in their lives. The 2 stories that follow are examples of how this dilemma can be worked with and turned around, leading not only to relief of the headaches, but to insight and resolution of the larger situation. Fred, a 38-year-old man, was referred for anxiety associated with sleep apnea due to his obesity. He also had chronic headaches. He came to the first MBSR class and didn't like it, but a gut feeling brought him back. From the time he started doing the body scan, his headaches disappeared. This happened despite the increasing stress of his life. He also became more assertive and more relaxed in his body. His dangerously high blood pressure came down to a level lower than it had been for 15 years. Lori, a 40-year-old divorced woman, was referred for migraine headaches and work stress. Her life was dominated by fear of her ex-husband, and the stress of a major corporate restructuring. In the 5th week of the program, she saw the lights that signaled the onset of a migraine, but for the first time, she had become aware of them early on. She took one pill, did the body scan, and fell asleep, waking up completely refreshed. She had short-circuited a headache on her own for the first time since she was a girl. She attributed her success to a greater sensitivity to her body and to having something she could do when she recognized the warning signs. Lori continued to be headache-free for 4 weeks, even though her life was in perpetual upheaval. But in the week following the end of the program, she had another big migraine. She felt like a failure. As we talked, it became clear that she had had higher expectations than usual for the holiday and had missed the early warning signs because she was too busy and tired. By not generalizing from this one headache, Lori was able to see that it was teaching her something she hadn't yet fully realized. It was teaching her that she needed to honor her body's messages and be even more prepared to stop what she was doing and take care of herself when the warning signs came. Chapter 24, Working with Emotional Pain. Your suffering is not you, but there is much you can do to heal it. The body has no monopoly on suffering. Emotional pain, the pain in our hearts and minds, is far more widespread and just as likely to be debilitating. It can take many forms: the suffering of self-condemnation, the pain of guilt, anxiety, fear, loss, grief, and despair. Just as with physical pain, you can be mindful of emotional pain and use its energy to grow and heal. The key is to be willing to make room for your suffering, to befriend it, to be with it just as you would with a physical symptom or a recurring thought. The willingness to cultivate mindfulness in moments of emotional pain is critical. The natural tendency is to avoid such feelings or to be swept away by them. In either case, we are too preoccupied to look directly with eyes of wholeness. Our emotional pain is also a messenger. Feelings have to be acknowledged and felt in all their force. If we ignore them, they fester and yield no resolution. If we exaggerate and dramatize them, they also linger and cause us to become stuck. Even in the tortured throes of grief or anger, it is still possible to be mindful, to know that in this moment I am feeling grief, and grief feels just like this. Strange as it may sound, the intentional knowing of your feelings in times of emotional suffering contains in itself the seeds of healing. The awareness that can know your feelings has an independent perspective that is outside of your suffering. It is not buffeted by the storms of the heart and mind. When held in awareness, the storm is no longer just happening to you. You are taking responsibility for feeling what you are feeling. These moments of pain can teach us a great deal. Mindfulness allows us to see more clearly into the nature of our pain and the stories we construct about it. When you find yourself in a period of suffering, try listening for a calm inner voice. You may discern that some of your pain is coming from non-acceptance, from rejecting what has already happened. There are many ways in which we suffer, but they are usually variations on a few basic themes. If you are mindful as emotional storms occur, perhaps you will see in yourself an unwillingness to accept things as they are. Just as in meditation, our minds have a strong tendency to reject things when it comes to our pain, which locks us into an identification with our separateness. If a momentary insight into your pain unfolds, let it be simply an observation. What we need in such moments is simply to feel what is here to be felt and let it wash through us. Acceptance does not mean you like what has occurred or that you are passively resigned to it. It means only that you admit the bare fact that whatever has happened has already happened. Profoundly healing insights may arise if you are willing to look deeply into your emotional pain. One major realization is the inevitability of change, the direct perception of impermanence. If you can be mindful at such times, you will also notice that even recurring images, thoughts, and feelings have a beginning and an end, like waves that rise up and then subside. That part of you that is mindful is just seeing what is transpiring, not rejecting, not condemning, not wishing things were different. Awareness, like a field of compassionate intelligence, takes it all in and serves as a source of peace within the turmoil. As we cultivate mindfulness in our own hearts, we can direct a similar compassion toward ourselves. One of the major sources of suffering is that we usually want to have things our own way. The irony is that we often don't really know what our way is. To break out of this trap, it is not a bad exercise to ask yourself from time to time, what is my own way? And other related questions. Many people in the stress reduction clinic rapidly discover that their own way may be the life that they are actually living. They come to see that their pain is a part of their own way too, and that they are not their suffering. By dropping into the present moment as it is, you become less susceptible to the feelings of fear and hopelessness that might arise. Working mindfully with your emotions begins by acknowledging what you are actually feeling. From a systems perspective, there are two major components to emotional pain: the domain of your feelings and the domain of the situation or problem. If you can differentiate between these two, you are more likely to chart your way to an effective resolution. This involves both problem-focused coping, which is about acting mindfully when you can, and emotion-focused coping, which involves bringing wise attention to the domain of your feelings. A story of climbing a mountain with my son Will illustrates how these two approaches can be used together. We were halfway up a difficult series of ledges when a storm was coming. We both got scared. Instead of pushing on, we honored our feelings, climbed back down, and found shelter. The next day, we developed a strategy that broke the problem down into pieces, and we were able to make it up the mountain. What Will took away from this, and what was reinforced in me, was a sense that fear could be worked with, that it could be attended to and honored, that it could even be helpful and intelligent. When you find yourself in times of emotional turmoil, it can be very therapeutic to proceed simultaneously on these two parallel tracks. Focusing on our emotions from the perspective of mindfulness, we discover that emotional crises are workable. You can intentionally expand your perspective around your feelings and cradle them in awareness. Mindfulness itself is the ultimate frame within which to perceive the actuality of things as they are. Times of great emotional upheaval are times when we most need to know that the core of our being is stable and resilient. Mindfulness of our thoughts and feelings, particularly in stressful situations, can play a major role in helping us to act effectively in the midst of our deepest emotional pain. These seeds of mindfulness can be sown and watered in many different ways. Among the dysregulations of emotion, depression is the most prevalent. A very important development has been the use of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT, to address the risks of relapsing into major depression. Developed by Zindel Siegel, Mark Williams, and John Teasdale, MBCT follows the same 8-week format as MBSR, but is designed specifically for people with a history of depression. The key to the MBCT approach is to recognize that any effort to fix depression only compounds its grip. What is required is a shift for Chapter 25, Working with Fear, Panic, and Anxiety. In the late 1970s movie Starting Over, there is a scene where a woman has an anxiety attack in a department store. Burt Reynolds' character, struggling to help her, shouts out, "Quick, does anyone have a Valium?" And 100 hands frantically fish into their pockets and purses. This is certainly an age of anxiety, a condition only exacerbated by the speed of our digital lives. Many people come to the stress reduction clinic with problems related to anxiety, caused by the rampant stress in their lives, and compounded by their medical problems. If we are honest, most of us will admit that we live our lives on an ocean of fear, much of the time trying to avoid recognizing it. These fears may be about death, abandonment, or betrayal, and they may stem from previous traumas, both big T and little t. We all carry such fears within us, but some people handle them much better than others. Commonly, we cope by ignoring, denying, or concealing these feelings, but this only increases the likelihood that damage will be done in some other way. Chronic anxiety can fuel severe patterns of experiential avoidance, trigger depression, and cause us to succumb to maladaptive coping strategies. The cultivation of mindfulness can have a positive impact on anxiety. In several studies, we showed that MBSR significantly reduced both anxiety and depression scores in patients with medical diagnoses and a secondary diagnosis of anxiety or panic disorder, and that these improvements were maintained at a 3-year follow-up. The application of mindfulness to chronic anxiety involves allowing the anxiety itself to become the object of our non-judgmental attention. When you move in close to your fears and observe them as they surface as thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations, you will be in a much better position to recognize them for what they are and to respond appropriately. The word fear implies a specific cause, and under certain threatening circumstances, all of us might experience it. It is a major characteristic of the fight-or-flight reaction. Frightening thoughts or experiences can easily lead to a state of panic. When we speak of anxiety, we are talking about a similar emotional state, but without a clearly identifiable cause. It is a generalized state of insecurity and agitation that can be triggered by almost anything. When this state of mind becomes pervasive, it is referred to as generalized anxiety disorder, GAD. In addition to GAD, some people suffer from panic attacks, discrete periods of intense fear for no apparent reason, often accompanied by acute physical symptoms. While it can be reassuring to know what a panic attack is, what is most important is to know that you can work with these mind-body storms by changing the way you see and pay attention to the processes of thought and reactivity within your own mind. Our studies showed that people who suffer from panic attacks and anxiety disorders are able to put mindfulness training to practical use in regulating their feelings. Although the results suggest that practicing mindfulness can dramatically reduce anxiety and panic attacks, it is in the individual stories that we can best see how this practice might be of profound use. Claire, a 33-year-old woman, came to the clinic with an 11-year history of panic attacks, which had worsened after her father's death. She was afraid to drive or go places alone and had become dependent on tranquilizers. In her heart, she felt that her doctor was not taking her seriously as a person, but rather trying to brainwash her into taking medication. The last straw came when she became pregnant. She insisted on getting off all her medication and started looking for alternatives. By the time she enrolled in the stress reduction program, 6 months pregnant, her anxiety made it difficult for her to get in her car. In the first class, she was able to relax into the body scan without any anxiety. This confirmed her belief that there was something she could do to free herself. She practiced every day and made progress each week. During the 8 weeks, she had only one very mild panic attack, a dramatic change from having several a day. At the end of the program, she was much more confident and no longer preoccupied with the fear of losing control in public. Although she was 9 months pregnant, she was practicing meditation every day. A year later, Claire had been off all medications and had not had a panic attack. Her baby had needed surgery, and she had found herself concentrating on her breathing to remain calm and clear-sighted. She felt she could never have handled such an intensely stressful situation had she not learned what she did in the MBSR program. Her story illustrates that chronic anxiety and panic are potentially controllable through mindfulness meditation, at least for a highly motivated person. Your meditation practice is a perfect laboratory for working with anxiety and panic. In the body scan, the sitting meditation, and the mindful yoga, we work at recognizing and accepting any feelings of tension or agitated thoughts. As you come to taste even brief moments of comfort and relaxation, you discover that anxiety is impermanent, a temporary mental state. Through ongoing practice, you learn to get in touch with your deep interior resources for physiological relaxation and calmness. Gradually, the tension in your body and the worry in your mind become less intrusive. You learn to accept the mind being choppy and at the same time experience an underlying inner peace in the domain of being. A critical part of this process is coming to see that you are not your thoughts and feelings. When you look at them as just thoughts, purposefully not reacting to them, you become a little freer from their attraction or repulsion. Mindfulness does not involve pushing thoughts away, but simply making room for them, observing them, and letting them be, using the breath as an anchor. Chapter 26, Time and Time Stress. In our society, time has become one of our biggest stressors. With the advent of the digital age, we have entered an amazing world of 24/7 connectivity. It was supposed to make our lives easier, but we may also find that we have developed a dependency on the technology that can become oppressive. Everything is happening faster, making it hard to keep up. Time is moving faster as we juggle more and more communications. We may be in touch with everyone else in the world, yet not so much in touch with ourselves, and too busy to even notice. Still, time has always been a huge mystery. At some stages of life, there is never enough of it. At others, it weighs heavily upon us. The antidote to time stress, whether you have too much or too little, is intentional non-doing. The challenge is to put this proposition to the test in your own life and see if your relationship to time can be transformed through the cultivation of mindfulness. If you are overwhelmed by the pressures of time, how could taking time away to practice non-doing possibly help? If you are isolated and bored with nothing but time on your hands, how could filling it with nothing help? The answer is simple. Well-being, inner balance, and peacefulness exist outside time. If you commit to spending some time each day in inner stillness, for those moments you are stepping out of the flow of time altogether. The stillness and calm that come from letting go of time transform your experience of time when you move back into it. By bringing awareness to present moment experience, it becomes possible to flow along with time rather than fighting against it. The more you practice making time for non-doing, the more your whole day becomes suffused with an awareness grounded in the present moment. Being aware takes no extra time. It simply rounds out each moment, restoring its fullness. If you are pressed for time, being in the present gives you more time by giving you back the fullness of each moment you already have. You can even bring this orientation to your electronic communications. First, by being in your body as you use your devices. Second, by constructing texts mindfully, pacing yourself as you respond to emails, and becoming aware of the impulse to tweet or share an experience before you have even allowed yourself to have it. Now let's suppose you find yourself in the opposite situation, with too much time on your hands. Perhaps you are older, more isolated, unable to do the things you once did. How could non-doing possibly help? Actually, you are probably doing a lot, even if you are unaware of it. You may be doing unhappiness, boredom, and anxiety, dwelling in thoughts and memories. These inner whirlpools of the mind can drain your energy and make the passage of time seem interminable. Our subjective experience of time is linked to the activity of thought. As we practice mindfully watching our thoughts, we cultivate an ability to dwell in the silence and stillness beyond the stream of thought in a timeless present. As T.S. Eliot wrote, "To be conscious is not to be in time." If you feel trapped in time, non-doing is a way to step out of it, into timelessness. By connecting with yourself outside the flow of time, you are already doing the most meaningful thing you could possibly do. You can look at all the time you have as an opportunity to engage in the inner work of being and growing. This can turn your life into an adventure and help you find meaning in each moment. Negative mental states cannot survive for long when timelessness is being cultivated. If you take a more cosmic perspective, none of us is here for very long. Perhaps it is the knowledge of death that ultimately drives us to feel pressed for time. We rush here and there, trying to get it all done in time, often so stressed that we are just trying to get through with it. In the process, we can miss what is most precious and important, the embodied experience of who is doing all of this doing, the domain of being. Some doctors believe that time stress is a fundamental cause of disease. Time urgency was a salient characteristic of type A behavior, a pattern driven by a sense of pressure to speed up all daily activities. As we have seen, the evidence points to hostility and cynicism as the most toxic elements of this behavior, but time stress has a toxicity all its own. Cardiologist Robert Elliott described his life leading up to his heart attack as a joyless treadmill, a constant state of being behind schedule with no time for family or friends. Norman Cousins described a similar experience of battling traffic, running through airports, and queuing up for boarding passes. Time pressures are not solely the province of successful executives. In our totally digital society, we are all exposed to the stress of time. The clock drives us from one thing to the next, and if we keep up this pattern without adequate rest, breakdown is inevitable. In earlier times, our activities were more in step with the cycles of the natural world. Daylight and darkness dictated different life rhythms. The ritual of sitting around a fire at night was perhaps Mankey. Chapter 27, Sleep and Sleep Stress. Sleeping is one of the most extraordinary and least appreciated things we do. Once a day, we lie down and leave our bodies for hours. It is sacred time, and we are very attached to it. People feel threatened when you tamper with their sleep time. Yet, ironically, one of the most common symptoms of stress is trouble with sleep. Either you can't get to sleep because your thinking mind won't shut down, or you wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep. The more you try to get back to sleep, the more awake you become. You can't force yourself to sleep. It is a dynamical condition, like relaxation, that you have to let go into. Getting enough sleep is a basic ingredient of good health. Our sleep patterns are intimately related to the natural world, to the planetary rhythms of light and darkness known as circadian rhythms. We have a biological clock, controlled by the hypothalamus, that regulates our sleep-wake cycle. When this connection is disrupted, it takes us some time to readjust. A 75-year-old woman came to the clinic with a sleep problem. Most nights she would spend the whole night awake, perfectly comfortable, not restless. She hated taking the tranquilizer her doctor had prescribed. She kept up the meditation practice faithfully, and by the end of the 8 weeks, she was sleeping marvelously every night without medication. If you are having trouble sleeping, your body may be trying to tell you something. Usually, it is just a signal that you are going through a stressful time. Sometimes it helps to look at how much exercise you are getting. And sometimes people get caught up in thinking they need more sleep than they really do. When you can't sleep, you might try getting out of bed and doing something else. I like to assume that if I can't sleep, it may be because I don't need to be sleeping just then. When I have trouble sleeping, the second thing I do is meditate. Sometimes this will calm the mind enough to go back to sleep. Other times, it may lead to doing something else. To handle sleeplessness in this way requires that you recognize and accept that you are already awake. Catastrophizing about how bad your day will be doesn't help. So why not let the future take care of itself and just be fully awake? The essence of mindfulness practice is to work at waking up from the self-imposed half-sleep of unawareness in which we are so often immersed. We tend to function on automatic pilot so much of the time that we are more asleep than awake. Even when we are awake, as Henry David Thoreau said, we must learn to reawaken and keep ourselves awake. If we make a commitment to be fully awake when we are awake, our view of not being able to sleep will change. Whenever we happen to be awake can be seen as an opportunity to practice being fully awake, accepting things as they are. When you do this, more often than not, your sleeping will take care of itself. In the stress reduction clinic, we put a lot of people to sleep, not that we mean to. The body scan is so relaxing that it is easy to fall asleep. So we have to learn how to fall awake as we get more relaxed. It just takes practice. When people come to the clinic for help with sleep problems, we give them permission to use the body scan to help them fall asleep, as long as they also use it at another time to fall awake. Most people with sleep disturbances report a marked improvement after a few weeks. Some find it equally effective to just focus on their breathing as they lie in bed. Let's think about how we manage to go to sleep. At a certain time, we lie down, close our eyes, and let delicious sleep come over us. Because we are so practiced at this, when we do the body scan, which is also done lying down with eyes closed, we have to learn to travel the road of deepening relaxation and recognize when we are coming to a fork. In one direction lies sleep, in the other, wakefulness and deep well-being. Both are blessings. Our great attachment to sleep causes us to worry about the consequences of losing it. But if you subscribe to the view that your body and mind can self-regulate, then you can use your sleep imbalance as a vehicle for further growth. When our children were babies, I was up a lot at night. I didn't fight it. I used it as part of my meditation practice. Seeing it this way, being up at night became just another form of training and growth. Now that our children are grown, I still sometimes find myself waking up in the middle of the night. I relish these times. using the precious gift of these hours to be as present for them as possible. Your relationship to sleep and to all the hours of the day and night is a very fruitful object of mindfulness. It will teach you a lot about yourself if you worry less about losing sleep and instead pay more attention to being fully awake. Chapter 28, People Stress. Other people can be a big source of stress. We all have times when we feel that others are controlling our lives, making demands on us, or being difficult or hostile. Our relationships with other people provide us with unending opportunities for practicing mindfulness and thereby reducing what I sometimes refer to as people stress. Stress arises from the interaction between us and the world. So in the case of people who cause us stress, we need to take responsibility for our part in those relationships. Many of us have developed deeply ingrained habits for dealing with interpersonal unpleasantness, often inherited from the ways our parents related to each other and to other people. Some of us, threatened by conflict, will do anything to avoid a blow-up, becoming passive and placating. Others may deal with their insecurities by creating conflict, seeing all interactions in terms of power and control. All of us probably have a mix of these different ways of being within us. The deeply automatic impulse for fight or flight influences our behavior, even when our lives are not in danger. When our interests or social status are threatened, we are capable of reacting unconsciously, often compounding our problems by increasing the level of conflict. But we also have the ability to reflect, to think, and to be aware. We have a range of other options available to us that go well beyond our most unconscious instincts, but for the most part, we need to cultivate these options purposefully. Relationships are based on connectedness and interconnectedness, on what we could call intrinsic relationality. When people are willing to communicate with honesty, candor, and mutual respect, an exchange of perspectives can lead to new ways of seeing and being together. We have the potential to improve our relationships dramatically if we bring mindfulness into the domain of communication itself. The motive of affiliative trust, which got stronger in people who took the stress reduction program, might be a healthy alternative to the relentless pursuit of power in relationships. The word communication suggests a flow of energy, a union, a meeting of minds. This doesn't necessarily mean agreement, but it does mean seeing the situation as a whole and understanding the other person's view as well as one's own. When we are totally absorbed in our own feelings and attached to our own view, genuine communication is virtually impossible. We will feel threatened by anyone who doesn't see things our way. But when both sides in a relationship expand the domain of their thinking and are willing to consider the other side's point of view, extraordinary new possibilities emerge. This possibility of attaining harmony applies to large collections of people as well. The overall picture for mutual understanding through communication is optimistic, as increasing virtual and real-life vehicles for sharing information come to influence communication on a global scale. In the MBSR curriculum, we address people stress through a series of awareness exercises adapted from the martial art of Aikido. These exercises help us to act out with our bodies, in partnership with another person, the experience of responding instead of reacting in threatening and stressful situations. In the first scenario, as an attacker comes at you, you just lie down and submit. People invariably find this distasteful but admit that it is frequently acted out in the real world. In another scenario, you move out of the way at the last minute. This usually leaves the attacker feeling frustrated. Couples often get into this kind of behavior, one pursuing and the other avoiding, a painful and lonely dynamic. In a third scenario, you push back. Both parties wind up pushing against each other. This is exhausting, but it feels better than being passive because at least there is contact. The last exercise is called entering and blending. This option represents the mindfulness-mediated stress response. It is based on being centered, on being awake and mindful. On a physical level, it involves stepping into the attacker, slightly to the side, and taking hold of their wrist. By entering the attack, you sidestep the brunt of it while making secure contact. By being willing to move with their momentum, you are communicating, metaphorically, that you are willing to see things from their perspective. You become partners rather than adversaries. What happens next becomes a dance. You are not in total control, but by maintaining your center, you are in control of yourself and therefore much less vulnerable to harm. The exercises are meant metaphorically. If you can remember to enter and blend when you are feeling under assault by a communication or circumstance, you will find you have many more options for responding rather than reacting. I once had a supervisor whose way of relating was to say things like, "You son of a bitch," with a big smile. I came to realize he had no idea he was being hostile. One day, I decided to call him on it, gently but matter-of-factly. His response was utter amazement. Our working relationship improved a good deal after that. I chose to name and then enter and blend with his unconscious attacks rather than resist them. The path of entering and blending involves taking certain risks, but if you are committed to meeting each moment mindfully, fresh and imaginative solutions often come to mind. This capacity for being in wise relationship to your thoughts and feelings and to those of others is known as emotional intelligence. When one person in an adversarial relationship takes responsibility for relating differently, the entire dynamic changes. The patience, wisdom, and firmness that can come out of a moment of mindfulness in a stressful interpersonal situation yield fruit almost immediately. When you are willing to be secure enough in yourself to listen to what other people want without constantly reacting, they will feel heard, welcomed, and accepted. Relationships can heal just like bodies and minds can heal. Fundamentally, this is done through love, kindness, and acceptance. To promote this healing, you will have to cultivate an awareness of the energy of relationships, including the domains of minds and bodies, thoughts, feelings, and speech, not only other people's, but also your own. One good way to increase this mindfulness is to keep a log of stressful communications for a week. People come in with many rich observations about their communication patterns that they had not been very conscious of before. Assertiveness is predicated on the assumption that you can be in touch with what you are actually feeling. The first step is to practice mindfulness of your own feeling states, recognizing that your feelings are simply your feelings, neither good nor bad. To act assertively requires a non-judgmental awareness of your feelings just as they are. This is itself an embodiment of self-compassion, kindness, and ultimately wisdom. Chapter 29, Role Stress. One of our biggest obstacles to effective communication is that we easily get stuck in our various personal and professional roles. Roles have a momentum of their own, shaped by the past, by the expectations of others, and by the expectations we hold for ourselves. We can unconsciously take on habitual roles with our partners, our parents, and our children. Work roles, social roles, even roles we adopt in illness can all be confining if we have no awareness of them. Role stress is a side effect of our ingrained habits of doing when the domain of being gets eclipsed. It can be a major obstacle to our continued development and a source of much frustration. We all have strong views about who we are, what we do, and how things should be done. These are usually colored by strong beliefs about what is and is not appropriate. All these ways of acting in the world can have a stylized component, a creation of our own mind that can prevent us from being who we really are. The momentum and demands of our roles can drive us to the point where they feel like prisons of our own making. Mindfulness can help us extricate ourselves from the negative effects of excessive role stress, much of which comes from unawareness or partial seeing. When we can observe our own involvement in the stress we blame on our roles, we can act in imaginative ways to restore balance and get unstuck. This happened dramatically in class one day during the pushing exercises. Abi, a 64-year-old rabbi, had a difficult time with the entering and blending exercise. Afterward, he stood bewildered and then exclaimed, "That's what it is. I never turn. I'm afraid I will get hurt if I turn." He had realized that his body was rigid when he was being attacked. In a metaphorical flash of insight, he connected this to his relationships in general, seeing that he never turns and only holds his own point of view, all because he has a fear of being hurt. Then he took it one step further, saying, "I could trust him. He's trying to help me." The whole experience was a new type of learning for him, releasing him for a moment from a role he is so enmeshed in. Sometimes it is easy to feel that the role you are in is the worst possible role. But just talking with other people who are feeling stress in similar or different situations can be healing, putting things in a larger perspective. Other people can mirror your situation and help you to see new options, ones your mind may have edited out as unthinkable. Usually, it is not the role per se, but our relationship to it that makes it stressful. Ideally, we want to make use of our roles as opportunities to do good work, to learn and to grow. But we need to be wary of identifying so strongly with one view that it blinds us. Every role has a particular set of potential stressors. The stress of success is one such example. People in positions of power and authority can become so attached to their professional role that they forget how to let go of that persona in their personal lives. The clash of multiple roles is an ongoing manifestation of the full catastrophe. Without awareness of the potential dangers of role stress, the damage may be done long before we realize what is happening. If we bring awareness to our various roles, we will be more likely to function effectively without getting stuck in them. We might even risk being ourselves in all our various roles, which means being willing to see and let go of old baggage that no longer works for us. Whenever you have had enough of being stuck in a role, you can decide to bring an element of wise attention to it. You can practice letting go, expanding to the full extent of your being by changing the way you do things. There's really only one way to do this: a ruthless and at the same time kind and self-compassionate commitment to seeing your own impulses and a willingness to let go of them in the very moments when they arise. As Abe saw so clearly, you have to turn to stay fresh and avoid the ruts. Maybe there is something to be learned from the fact that the Chinese character for breakthrough is written as turning. Chapter 30, Work Stress. All the potential stressors we have examined, time pressures, other people, and confining roles, converge in the work arena, often compounded by the need to make money. Most jobs are potentially stressful, but work is also a way of connecting with the larger world, of making a contribution that hopefully has rewards beyond a paycheck. If we could see our own work in this way, it might make it more tolerable, even deeply satisfying. People who can't work often feel they would give anything to be working again. We often forget that work can lend meaning and coherence to our lives. Some jobs are particularly demeaning or exploitative, and some working conditions are highly toxic. Studies show that men in jobs with little decision-making latitude but high standards of performance have a higher prevalence of heart attacks. But even if you have a job you love, work always presents its unique challenges. The law of impermanence still applies. You can't control everything. There are always people or forces that can disrupt your work. At the level of the individual, job stress, insecurity, and frustration can be experienced in any job and at any pay grade. The degree to which you are affected by such circumstances can be influenced positively by your own coping skills. As we saw with Dr. Seligman's studies, it is not the potential stressor itself, but how you perceive it that will determine whether it leads to stress. If we are not careful, we can burn out at any job, no matter how much control we have. This is especially so in this era of unending electronic communications. As author Tony Schwartz writes, paradoxically, the best way to get more done may be to spend more time doing less. We have to develop personal strategies for conserving our energy and attention, which takes moment-to-moment awareness. To cope effectively with work stress requires that you look at your situation with eyes of wholeness. It can help to ask yourself, what is the job I am really doing, and how can I best do it under the circumstances? We can easily fall into ruts in our roles, especially if we have held the same job for a long time. It is not uncommon for us to operate on autopilot at work. Why should we expect to be fully awake in the moment at work if mindfulness is not something we value in our lives as a whole? Work stress can be greatly reduced in many cases simply by an intentional commitment to cultivate calmness and awareness. Our own mind can produce more limitations than there are in actuality. We can train ourselves to see openings, not just barriers. Bringing the meditation practice into your work life can make for major improvements in its quality. Simply deciding to make your work part of your meditation practice can shift the balance from a sense of being done in by the job to a sense of knowing what you are doing and choosing to do it. Work can become a vehicle that you are purposefully using to learn and to grow. When you introduce mindfulness as the thread guiding your seeing and your actions from moment to moment, work really becomes something you are choosing to do. You are bringing the same attitudes that we have been cultivating as the foundation of mindfulness into your work life in a seamless merging of moments. When you begin to look at work mindfully, you are bringing all your inner resources to bear on your slot. Chapter 31, Food Stress. You cannot live a healthy life in our complex, globalized society without paying at least some attention to what you are putting into your body. Our relationship to food has changed so much in the past few generations that a new form of intelligence is necessary to sort out what is of value from the incredible choices presented to us. Gone are the days when we ate directly off the land, consuming a small number of foods that were the staples of our culture for millennia. We lived in a homeostatic balance with the natural environment. We are still a part of nature, but we are less aware of our intimate connections with it now that we can manipulate it so much to our own ends. Our relationship to food in first world countries has undergone an enormous transformation. We have gone from being producers of food to being a nation of food consumers. We are now continually exposed to foods that are synthesized or processed in factories. It is now possible to obtain any food we want in any season thanks to a distribution system that transports it over huge distances. Refrigeration, freezing, and preservatives have made it possible for us to eat whatever we want, whenever we want. Our food production and distribution system is a perfect example of our collective interdependence. A massive trucker strike would result in cities empty of food within a matter of days. Our food supply has become concentrated in a small number of gigantic corporations. Our grandparents would not recognize perhaps 70% of what is on supermarket shelves as food. There is no question that as a population, we are probably healthier than ever before, though this may be only partially due to our diets. Clean water and sanitation played an enormous role, and we may be at a critical inflection point in the health of our society. There is mounting evidence that health in America is now being impaired by diseases associated with an overconsumption of food, diseases occasioned by our affluence and abundance. Our health is also being threatened by exposure to thousands of chemicals in our environment, from pesticide residues to industrial pollutants that our bodies were never exposed to before. We are playing a kind of chemical Russian roulette with our own bodies. Since the food we eat over a lifetime has a major influence on our health, we need to pay attention in a sensible, non-alarmist, non-fanatical way to what we put in our bodies. Obesity is rapidly becoming a global epidemic, and with it, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and cardiovascular disease. Diet clearly comes into play in a range of chronic diseases. It is well known that a diet high in animal fat and cholesterol is a major factor in coronary artery disease. Cardiovascular diseases are more prevalent than all other diseases put together, so paying attention to what we eat is extremely important. As Asian societies adopt more of an American diet, they are now seeing dramatic increases in heart disease and obesity. While the relationship of diet to cancer is less clear, there is considerable evidence that points to a role for diet in cancers of the breast, colon, and prostate. There are many ways in which we can become aware of our relationship to food and transform it. One piece of advice from Michael Pollan is, eat food, mostly plants, not too much. It is good advice, but not so easy to do. It challenges us to ask whether what we are putting into our bodies is actually food. Pioneering work by Dr. Dean Ornish has consistently demonstrated that by changing your lifestyle in a comprehensive way, including what you choose to eat, you can slow down, stop, and even reverse the progression of severe coronary heart disease and early-stage prostate cancer. The Ornish approach involves not only changing the way you eat, but also the way you live, incorporating moderate exercise, yoga, and meditation. Dr. Ornish's work is a dramatic demonstration of the resiliency of the human body. It shows that even after years of a chronic pathological process, we can do something not only to stop it, but to reverse its damage. This can be accomplished not with drugs, but by people becoming more aware of their own ability to change their lives and their health. The more people changed their diet and lifestyle, the more they improved. What seems to matter most is your overall way of eating and living, and the degree of kindness and self-compassion you bring to the undertaking. The discipline and intentionality blend into a way of being. Changing your relationship to food is not so easy. It requires a profound commitment and inner discipline born of intelligence rather than fear. It will involve becoming mindful of your relationship to food at all levels. The practice of mindfulness can be particularly useful for making and maintaining healthy changes. We can hardly avoid looking at the domain of eating when we start paying attention in daily life. Food certainly occupies a central role in our lives. We can bring mindfulness to all aspects of it: buying, preparing, eating, and cleaning up. We can be more conscious of the quality of the food, where it comes from, and what is in it. The best place to begin is not by trying to make any changes at all, but by simply paying close attention to exactly what you are eating and how it affects you. When people in the stress clinic start paying attention in this way, they report interesting observations. Some discover they eat certain foods out of habit, not because they like them. Many report that they now get more enjoyment out of eating because they are aware of it in a new way. Almost none of our patients come to the clinic seeking to lose weight, yet many naturally start eating more slowly and find they are satisfied with less. Some actually lose weight simply by paying attention. Phil, the truck driver with back pain, lost 14.5 pounds. "I'm paying attention when I eat," he said. "I eat less if I slow myself down because I chew my food better. I taste it." It is important for all of us to pay attention to our relationship to food and to what is known about the connections between diet and health. This is where simply applying moment-to-moment awareness to food and eating can be crucial. Many people use eating as a form of stress reduction. We eat when we are anxious, lonely, or bored. This is a lot of automatic eating, and what we eat at those times can add up to an unhealthy diet. Most of us find it quite difficult to change our dietary habits, which have been conditioned over our entire lifetime. Eating holds many different meanings for us and can be part of our sense of identity and well-being. That is why the gentle, non-forcing approach of mindfulness brought to eating can be both transformative and healing. Rather than losing what you most fear, you may find that you are re-establishing and reconfiguring the connections that are most meaningful to you. Chapter 32, World Stress. Our world, planet Earth, has apparently come down with a fever. The diagnosis is serious, the prognosis not good, and things could get a lot worse. This fever is primarily a result of our activity as human beings, our agriculture, livestock, and industries, our burning of carbon-containing fuels, and our destruction of the rainforests. As a result, the world itself is now being stressed in ways that have never happened before in the span of human history. The potential consequences are largely unknown, but do not portend well. Perhaps it is time for us to wake up to the unforeseen consequences of our actions, not just as individuals, but as a species. All these phenomena are interconnected, stemming from the human mind and human activity. When the human mind knows itself, we get wisdom, beauty, and compassion. When it does not, we get ignorance, cruelty, and destruction. For this reason, mindfulness, writ both large and small, is not a luxury. Writ small, it is a liberative strategy for being healthier and happier as an individual. Writ large, it is a vital necessity if we are to survive and thrive as a species, to fully embody our name, Homo sapiens sapiens, the species that is aware and knows that it is aware. Harking back to the previous chapter on food stress, we tend to take the abundance of wholesome food for granted. But planetary changes such as drought are severely straining the food supply, and these pressures will only increase with the warming of the planet. We would do well to recognize how much our individual well-being will depend on these larger ecological and geopolitical forces. There are too many factors we don't know about that might have long-term negative effects on our health. It is important to think about diet in a broader sense. considering the quality of the food we buy, where it was grown, and what was added to it. Perhaps we need to expand our definition of food altogether. I like to think of anything that we take in and absorb that gives us energy as food. In this way, water is a vital food. So is the air we breathe. The quality of the water we drink and the air we breathe directly affects our health. We have to start thinking about our air and water as food and pay attention to their quality. We have to depend on our institutions to keep the food supply uncontaminated. The ecology of the planet, just like the human body, is a dynamical system, robust but also delicate, with its own limits. The vast majority of environmental scientists think we have already gone dangerously far in throwing its cycles out of balance. The effects of these practices may not be remote at all. Storms of increasing severity may become much more common, major stressors in our lives and in the lives of future generations. While it can feel as if there is nothing we as individuals can do, just becoming more aware and informed is a significant positive first step. By changing yourself and your own behavior, you do change the world. These issues affect our lives and our health, whether we know it or not. Unless we radically change the course of history with a new kind of thinking based on understanding wholeness, the examples of the past give us little cause for optimism. We are drowning in a sea of information, much of it bad news about death, destruction, and violence. This steady diet, consumed daily, has an effect on us, individually and collectively. Television, movies, and our celebrity-obsessed culture are also a large part of this diet, and the bombardment of our nervous system with images, sounds, and information is particularly stressful if it never lets up. The constant agitation of our thinking minds is fed and compounded by this diet. These observations are offered as food for thought. Every issue can be seen in many different lights. They are examples of our interface with what we might call world stress, meant to provoke and challenge you to cultivate a more conscious way of living. Each of us needs to come to our own way of seeing world stress. It affects us all. World stress will only become more intense in the future. The more complicated the world gets, the more important it will be to practice non-doing, to protect our sanity, and remind ourselves of what it means to be human. None of the impending challenges are insurmountable. They have all been created by the human mind and can be met and navigated by the human mind if it learns to value wisdom and harmony. To do so requires us to leap beyond the impulses of fear, greed, and hatred. There are a few hopeful signs on the political, economic, and technological fronts. Mindfulness is increasingly making its way into the mainstream of society. Macroeconomist Jeffrey Sachs has made a compelling case that mindfulness needs to be at the heart of any attempt to resolve the major problems we face. Citing both the Buddha and Aristotle, he makes the case for a middle path, a path of moderation and balance. He writes, "We need a mindful society." Other inspiring efforts are already bringing greater mindfulness into various aspects of the body politic. Congressman Tim Ryan is a tireless advocate for mindfulness-based programs in areas as diverse as health, education, and the military. In Silicon Valley, interest in mindfulness and its applications is growing. Companies like Google, Apple, and Facebook are incorporating mindfulness into their work climate and even their products. The annual Wisdom 2.0 conference brings together the leadership of the tech world with the leaders of the mindfulness movement. To return to politics, mindfulness is also becoming part of the politics of the United Kingdom, with members of Parliament practicing together and advocating for its societal and economic potential. All these unfoldings would have been unimaginable even a few short years ago. The movement of mindfulness into the mainstream of medicine, healthcare, psychology, and neuroscience itself would have been seen as inconceivable in 1979. I see all these emergences as very promising signs, the beginning of a major global movement that will spur us to come to our senses as a species. We can be the agent of healing and flourishing if we wake up. This work has hardly begun, and it will need virtually all of us on the planet to contribute. And so we come full circle, from the outer world back to the inner world, from the larger whole back to the individual person. The world is changing at warp speed, and we are inexorably enmeshed in those changes. All are part of the full catastrophe. The challenge, of course, is how we are to live. Chapter 33, New Beginnings. As another cycle of the MBSR program comes to a close, I look around at the people who embarked on this journey 8 short weeks ago. Their faces and the way they sit are different. They know how to sit. The stillness in the room is exquisite. It feels as if they know something very simple now that somehow eluded them before. Nothing much has changed on a big scale in their lives, except, in some subtle way, everything. They do not want to stop. This happens every time a cycle comes to an end. It always feels as if we are just getting started. But we stop for many reasons, the most important being to develop autonomy and independence. Our learning needs to be tested in the world, with nothing to fall back on except our own inner resources. This is an important part of making the practice one's own. The practice need not stop just because the program is over. This journey is a lifelong one. It is just beginning. By ending the classes, we are purposefully taking away the external supports so that people can work at sustaining the momentum of mindfulness on their own. Our meditation practice needs a chance to develop on its own, to depend only on our own intentionality and commitment. The graduate classes we offer are well attended, a testament to the value of continuing the practice, but they are not essential. What is essential is your vision and your commitment to practice today and tomorrow. Looking around the room, I am struck by the high level of enthusiasm and the mutual respect and admiration among the participants. Edward, who has AIDS, feels his life depends on the practice. He has lifted his spirits and feels he can handle the physical and emotional ups and downs of his illness. Peter, who had a heart attack, has made major changes in his life. Marge, who had surgery right after the program, used the meditation practices to prepare and recover, and she had no problems with pain. Art has fewer headaches and feels more relaxed. Phil, the French-Canadian truck driver, feels his pain is more manageable and his life richer. Eleanor, who came for panic attacks, has not had one since the program started and feels she has touched areas of inner peace she had never known in 60 years. Louise, whose son made her take the program, found it started helping right away with her rheumatoid arthritis, and she learned to pace herself, even visiting the Baseball Hall of Fame, something she would never have thought possible before. Loretta, who came for hypertension, has clearly seen that she can be trapped by the positive as much as by the negative, and that she must define her experiences on her own terms for them to hold real meaning. Hector has learned to control his anger better, to hold his center not just physically, but emotionally. All these people have worked hard on themselves, their gains coming out of the loneliness of the long-distance meditator, out of their willingness to practice even when they didn't feel like it. Before we close, Phil, the class storyteller, shares a memory from his childhood about a small country church and a farmer who spoke of the difference between a cow, which gives every day, and a pig, from which you get nothing good until it is dead. The message, as Phil now understands it, is the same as with the stress reduction program. You have to give something, you have to really work at it, you have to give thanks to your body. It is clear as they leave that most people understand this is only the beginning. The journey is lifelong. They have found an approach that makes sense to them because they explored it for themselves and found it of value. This is the simple path of mindfulness, of being awake in one's own life. Walking this path requires that you keep up the meditation practice. The way of awareness tends to get overgrown if you don't, but you can always come back to it because it is always right here. With this perspective, once you are cultivating mindfulness systematically, it is virtually impossible to stop. Chapter 34, Keeping Up the Formal Practice. The most important part of the work of mindfulness is to keep your practice alive. The way you do that is to do it. It needs to become part of your life, just as eating or working is. Making time for formal practice every day is like feeding yourself every day. It is that important. The specific practices you choose are not as important as keeping up your practice. The various practices are just ways of bringing you back to yourself, of reminding you that it is possible in this moment, to rest in awareness itself. The important thing is to keep coming back. The best advice for any question in meditation is to keep practicing, to just keep looking at whatever arises in non-judgmental awareness and with kindness. It may be helpful to reread Part 1, The Practice of Mindfulness, from time to time as your practice deepens. The instructions are so simple that it is easy to misunderstand them. Even the instruction to watch your breath is often misunderstood to mean think about your breath. The practice is inviting you to explore experientially being with your breathing, observing it, feeling it. Remember, it is the awareness that is most important, not the breath. The instructions on how to handle thinking are also often misunderstood. We are not suggesting that thinking is bad and should be suppressed. The way to handle thinking is to just observe it as thinking, to be aware of thoughts as events in the field of your consciousness. In mindfulness practice, it is okay to have any thoughts at all. We don't try to censor our thinking, nor do we judge it. The work of mindfulness is very gentle. Here is where the work of acceptance comes in. We need to remember to be gentle and kind with ourselves as we allow ourselves to be receptive not only to the breath but to any moment. The real practice is not what technique you are using, but your commitment to accord wise attention to your experience from moment to moment. Other problems can undermine your practice. A big one is thinking that you are getting someplace. As soon as you notice you are feeling proficient or getting into special states, you have to be careful. While it is natural to be pleased by signs of progress, it is important to just let them happen without generating a big story about them. The mind runs after anything and everything. What is important is to recognize the impulse to build up a story and to work with it in awareness, seeing it as a thought and letting it go. For this reason, we recommend that people taking the MBSR program not tell a lot of people that they are meditating, and also that they try not to talk about their meditation, but just do it. This brief review has covered some of the most common misunderstandings about the formal practice. For convenience, the 8-week practice schedule is summarized below. It is probably best if you practice using the guided meditation CDs. Following this program for 8 weeks and then continuing on your own will provide a strong foundation. Beyond the 8 weeks, the suggestions are simple. Sit every day for at least 20 minutes. If the body scan is your major form of practice, make sure you sit as well. If you have a bad day and absolutely no time, then sit for 3 minutes or even 1 minute. If at all possible, try to sit in the morning. Practice the yoga 4 or more times a week. Experiment with other guided meditations. See what happens as your practice evolves and deepens. You may also find it helpful to practice together with other people from time to time. Retreats can be an extremely important part of deepening your practice and making it your own. You might also try searching out groups in your area with whom you could sit on occasion. There are many wonderful centers in the United States and around the world that could be invaluable resources for supporting your practice. Finally, just sit, just breathe, just rest in being present, being aware. And if you feel like it, allow yourself to smile inwardly, just a tad. Chapter 35, Keeping Up the Informal Practice. The essence of mindfulness is paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. Keeping up the informal practice means paying attention, being awake, and owning your moments as best you can. You can ask yourself at any point, am I fully awake? Do I know what I am doing right now? How does my body feel right now? What is my mind up to? You can tune into standing, walking, listening, speaking, eating, and working. You can tune into your thoughts, your mood states, the sensations in your body, other people, and the larger environment. As long as you are awake, you can be mindful. Paying attention does not mean thinking about. It means directly perceiving what you are attending to. Mindfulness is a non-conceptual knowing, the essence of awareness. By practicing in this way, we can break loose from the automatic pilot mode and gradually bring ourselves to live more in the present moment. We can practice this anytime, anywhere, as long as you are willing to be awake. First and foremost is practicing tuning in to our breathing at various moments throughout the day. This anchors us in the present, grounds us in our body, and helps us to be centered and awake. The essence of the informal practice is always the same, inquiring of yourself, am I here now? Am I awake? Am I in my body? The very asking usually brings us more into the present. The informal homework assignments for the 8 weeks of MBSR are meant to accompany the formal practices. For week 1, the assignment is to eat at least one meal this week mindfully. For week 2, be aware of one pleasant event a day while it is happening and record it in a calendar, looking for patterns. Also bring awareness to at least one routine activity a day. For week 3, be aware of one unpleasant or stressful event a day. For week 4, be aware of any stress reactions during the week without trying to change any of them. For week 5, bring awareness to moments in which you find yourself reacting and experiment with responding rather than reacting. For week 6, bring awareness to what you choose to eat. Be particularly aware of other people and the quality of your relationships with them. Experiment with silently generating loving-kindness. For week 7, bring particular awareness to waking up in the morning and lingering in bed, realizing that it is a brand new day. For week 8, the last formal week of the program, we often say that the 8th week is the rest of your life. It has no end. There are some additional awareness exercises you may find useful. Try to be mindful for 1 minute in every hour. Touch base with your breathing throughout the day. Bring awareness to the connections between physical symptoms of distress and preceding mental states. Be mindful of your needs for formal meditation, relaxation, exercise, a healthy diet, enough sleep, intimacy, affiliation, and humor, and honor them. After a particularly stressful day, take steps to decompress and restore balance. In summary, every moment of your waking life is a moment to which you might bring greater stillness, awareness, and embodied presence. The suggestions here will pale next to your own as you cultivate mindfulness in your life. Chapter 36, The Way of Awareness. In our culture, we are not so familiar with the notion of ways or paths. It is a concept from ancient China, the notion of a universal lawfulness of all things known as the Tao, or the Way. The Tao is the world unfolding according to its own lawfulness. To live in accord with it is to understand non-doing and non-striving. Your life is already doing itself. The challenge is to see in this way and live in harmony with all things in all moments. This is the path of insight, wisdom, and healing. It is the art of conscious living. There is still far too little of this in our education. As a rule, our schools do not emphasize being or the training of attention. We are left to sort out the domain of being for ourselves in a world where doing is the dominant currency. Awareness itself is not highly valued, nor are we taught how to nurture and inhabit it. It might have helped us considerably to have been shown in elementary school that we are not our thoughts, that we can watch them come and go. It would have been helpful to know that the breath is an ally, that it leads to calmness just by watching it, and that it is okay to just be. We may not have gotten these messages as children, but it is not too late. Anytime you decide to reconnect with the domain of your own wholeness is the right time to start. In the yogic traditions, age is measured from when you started practicing, not from when you were born. The real work we invite people to in the stress reduction clinic is the exploring of the notion that there is a way of being that is like starting afresh, right now, within all one's suffering. You are invited, in the same spirit, to work at making the domain of being an ally in your life, to walk the path of mindfulness and see for yourself how things change when you change the way you are in relationship to your body, your mind, your heart, and to the world. This adventure has all the elements of a heroic quest. As it turns out, we don't have to look very far to reconnect with our deepest selves. At any moment, we can find stillness and peace right here. When you walk the path of awareness, you are bringing a systematic consciousness to the experience of living that only makes living more vibrant, more real. Mindfulness practice provides an opportunity to walk along the path of your life with your eyes open, responding consciously in the world instead of reacting mindlessly. No one dictates to you what that path is. The whole point is that there is only one way, but that way manifests in as many different ways as there are people. Our real job is to find our own way, until we realize that we have never been separate from our truest self. There is no way to fail in this work if you approach it with sincerity and constancy. Meditation is not relaxation spelled differently. If you are practicing mindfulness, the only thing that is really important is whether you are willing to be with things as they are in any moment, including discomfort and tension, and your ideas about success and failure. If you are, then there is no failure. The way of awareness has a structure to it, one we have gone into in some detail. It is a path to be traveled, a way of being, a way of living your moments, and living them fully. Mindfulness is a lifetime's journey along a path that ultimately leads nowhere, only to who you are. So, having arrived at this point on our journey together, let's let the moment be cradled in the vision of the great Chilean poet Pablo Neruda in a poem he called Keeping Quiet. He writes of a moment of stillness, an exotic moment without rush, without engines, in which we would all be together in a sudden strangeness. A moment in which those who prepare for war would walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. He clarifies that this should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. Perhaps, he suggests, if for once we could do nothing, a huge silence might interrupt the sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive.